Mormonism is not as innocent as it looks, nor did it start that way. And I don't know if you know this, but Joseph Smith originally started things like the Order of Enoch. How funny is that?
Are you serious? Is that what he called it? That's what he called it?
I'm dead. He originally called it, he was trying to do a communal living situation. Sound familiar? Like all of them, like every cult ever. And then he calls this the Order of Enoch. And this is how the FLDS, which are the fundamentalists, live, and everything they have and own, including the land and home and everything they have, is underneath the prophet's name. And what I'm going to tell you here very quickly is he was a practitioner of Solomonic magic, and I can prove this in so many ways. So no, it isn't folk magic. Solomonic magic is serious. Two magics that you don't want to mess with. He was involved with both Enochian and Solomonic magic. The reason why I speak out is because if this is all true, which I know it to be true, other people can look this up all for themselves so they can know it's true themselves. But when I knew it was, I knew one thing about my brothers and sisters left in the church, including my family members. They are practicing something they don't understand. And it goes far back to extremely ancient magical things. And they're not worshiping the God that they think they're worshiping, and it's concerning.
Those clips you just heard were from my recent interview with Heidi Love, a former member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or LDS or Mormons. It's all the same thing. And her story is remarkable. I can't wait to share that interview with you here in this video. And there's so many things, so many connections that she's made in her work on her own podcast and everything else regarding the church's roots to both Enochian and Solomonic magic. And she has done a phenomenal job in exposing these things and really bringing out some of the more obscure and hidden topics of the church to light. But see, here's the thing. Before we get into this one, you might even be wondering, well, so what? What about the LDS? Is it really that important? Do they really even have that big of a footprint in the world? And to that I say this. If I were to ask you, what is the richest church, the wealthiest church in the world today, what would your response be? Now, clearly, most people would immediately say, oh, it's the Vatican, or maybe it's this church or that church. But certainly the Vatican and the Catholics, right? Well, according to a 2024 Vanguard report from the Vanguard News Media, actually, number one on their list of the wealthiest churches in the world is actually the Latter-day Saints. And we're going to talk about why in this deep dive interview. By the way, the original name of this church is actually the Order of Enoch, which is fascinating. If you didn't check out my interview with Gary Wayne, I recommend that. Go check that out on the channel here. We're going to get into more Enochian stuff and just how this is a real end times, last days deception. But see, the Catholic Church of Australia is actually number 2 on the list for Vanguard. Then you have the Seventh-day Adventists, and then the Vatican is number 4. And then the Church of England is number 5 on their list. Now, these findings are also, corroborated and validated by the Widow's Mite official LDS report from 2024. And the Widow's Mite revealed that, yes, the LDS's church wealth, the total wealth, reached nearly $300 billion in 2024. And now, who knows what their wealth is in 2025, but they have a massive amount of investments, a massive amount of operating assets. $300 billion is roughly how much the church is worth. And so this is a massive organization. It's the richest church in the world. We need to talk about this. We need to talk about the real name of the church. Actually, one of the earliest names was the Order of Enoch. Let's dive into this. And remember to share this information, like and subscribe, because I think your mind's going to be blown, just like mine was. So, joining me once again, Heidi Love. Thank you for being here, sister. How are you doing today?
I'm so happy to be here. And anytime I get somebody that hits me up about God, we got to have a talk, right? I'm excited.
Yes, indeed. So please tell us a little bit about your background, your story, and why you started your podcast.
Sure. So that is definitely a wild rabbit trail that I never thought would happen. I was telling you before we came on that, this is not something I ever prepared to do. And I'm a nurse. I'm a registered nurse. I have been most of my life. It's going on 26 years. So that's a long time to be changing wheelhouses a little bit, which, I didn't plan for. Surprise. And also, I felt like that was like enough, right? Like I'm being a mom, I'm doing this nursing, I'm super busy, and then I had 2020 happen, and some weird things happened to me in 2020 because I started really opening my eyes to a lot that was going on. I'd already left the church by then, but I was praying a lot and really in my scriptures and just, asking God for things like, what should I do with this or that? Not for like a new car or something, like about your life. And so I really felt led to really be engulfed in scripture study at that point, and I was like doing notes and all these journals and everything, and I was like, God, please help me with this certain situation I had with my daughter, and please, and I know you shouldn't Faustian with God, but like your brain sometimes does that, right? Like you're like, please, and if you do, I'll do anything, and that's not quite the same, but it's kind of that leverage thing. And I was like, I'll do anything. Like, I just need help with this. And God, I just had it on my heart, like he didn't come down and answer me in my face or anything. I didn't have a Joseph Smith moment. um, but yeah, I felt really like you should do this podcasting. And I was like, what? Do what with it? Like I loved podcasts and I always listen and I'm pretty much always learning. I really hate wasted time. So for example, I think last year I had 50,000 hours of listening time in podcasts. That's not counting my audiobooks. So the kids just laugh. They always know I have long hair. Usually I always have one earphone in. I'm always listening to something. And so yeah, I had that impression, I guess. And I was like, this is weird. No. And so then I just ignored it. And kept going on with my life. And I ended up being on a podcast on accident. I wrote into this podcaster I liked and I said, hey, you should do a show about blah, blah, blah. Here's the information. I love your show. Bye. And he's like, "Wait a minute. What? Like, why don't you come on?" I was like, "'Cause I don't do that. I don't even like." He's like, "No, just do what you just said, and that was great." And I'm like, "No." So, after we talked back and forth, he's like, "It's really not difficult. Like, I don't have a mic. I don't have this." He's like, "No, no, just look, just try it." And I was like, "Okay." So I went on, and then he said, "But you mentioned you used to be a Mormon." I'm like, "Oh, yeah, because I live in Utah. Like, that's not a big deal to me." And he said, "I'd love to hear about that." And I was like, "Why? Like, everybody knows." This is how naive I am at this point, right? Like, people know all about this. And he's like, "No, they don't." And so 4 shows later, I think a total of 4, he said, "This is great, and I could have you keep coming on, but I think you might have a voice that people need to hear." And so first 10 episodes, cried my little heart out, didn't know what I was doing, didn't know how to do marketing, recording. I just didn't know any of it. Like I really had never done a Zoom call ever before that. And I know that seems weird because people are like, "Oh, but what about work stuff?" No, I'm just a nurse. We don't do stuff like that really that much. So yeah, I made it through, stopped crying, prayed more. Um, got a little help along the way, right? Gotta have that. So here I am today, and it's been 2.5 years since I started. Came wildly out of nowhere for the podcast community, I'm sure, but that's really what happened.
It's the unfiltered rise. No, so tell me, how did you have the epiphany? When did it happen? Like what year? How long ago did you come out of Mormonism and how did that all work out?
Yes. So I got out of Mormonism when I was 34. I'm now 49. So it's been a while. But I will say this for a while. I was a very baby Christian until Probably 2020, honestly. And even then, I was like starting as a baby Christian and developing, and I still am developing. I mean, this is like a all the time thing with studies, with God, with everything. We're constantly changing and learning, hopefully. And I had a husband that's have a husband. He was very, devout in being not a Mormon because he's smarter than I was. He got out at 16 and he was like, you should listen to this guy, Sean McCraney. And I was like, okay, like that's fine because I was out, but I really wasn't doing anything with it. I didn't know what you do then. Where do you go? There's no churches hardly. But my mom was a Stevens minister for a Christian church. And I had gone with her to her church. And it was kind of one of these it's a big church. And that also didn't feel like where I needed to forever be, but it was good for the time. I'm not saying they're bad church or anything, but it just didn't feel like a good fit for me because it was so big. It was just almost overwhelming. And then like they're singing and it's rock and roll. And this is so weird. Like, because if you come from Mormonism, yeah, you're just like, rock and roll Jesus church. What? So it was weird. And I grew to like it later. I think it was the shock, to be honest. But I did go down for roll call and I just went down because my mom was like, well, you already believe this. You should come and do that. And I did it. And I thought, oh, big deal. No, I bawled like a freaking baby. I thought they were going to have to like take me out of the room. It was crazy.
So
Um,
sorry, Heidi. By roll
yeah.
call, do you mean like an altar call, like giving your life to Christ for the first time?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yep, you go down and I just didn't even know it would hit me like that. I was actually shocked cuz I was out for a while. Like I thought big deal, like I've already said I'm done with this. Whoa, it hit me like a ton of bricks. And so I really started at 2020 when I had this issue with my daughter, which is still going on. I have an estrangement with my oldest daughter. She's 29 and it's really hard because she met a guy, she got engaged. It's not about Mormonism. He just met me 3 times, decided I wasn't worthy, and now I'm a toxic narcissist apparently, unbeknownst to me. But yeah, no. So he's really weaponized anything from my past or anything from my family against us, and saying to her, "Look, you're so much better without these people." And that's really hard because I don't think you can judge anyone after 1 breakfast and 2 hangouts. That's really weird. Um, I would never even judge him off of that. Like, I actually thought he was great. So to this day, I'm still confused about that. But um, I did talk about Freemasonry at dinner. And sometimes I
Mm,
wonder, he's a pilot, he's very important. Um, sometimes I look back on that and go, maybe something was up there. But parents are in like the Lions Club and different things. So
mm,
it has some relevance. But long story short, she moved clear across the country and I was uninvited to her her wedding. I didn't get to go. They changed the phone number. It's a complete cutoff. Like I'm not allowed. And basically have been told if I do try to come around, they'll call the police. So which is
So,
weird because me and her were best friends. Yeah.
was that a direct consequence of you leaving the LDS church?
No, I think that was just a direct consequence of me starting to really dive in and give my life to God and things sometimes get hard, right? And she was very close to me and I would say we were best friends and that was a hard loss. That was a time where I easily could have gone, God doesn't exist. He doesn't love you. He didn't help you. Like, right? Because people do that sometimes. You have these things where you're like, God, I'm all for you. And here I am. And now you're not helping me. And instead of doing that, I was like, well, I'm not Job and all my kids didn't die in one day, so I guess that's much better than that. Like we need to be stronger than this. So, and I still have hope. I the story of the prodigal son is something that is dear to me because I hope and pray someday she'll come back. Even him, it's a hard thing because you don't want to pray against their marriage, you don't want to pray against like any of these things because whatever God's aligning, like I shouldn't be intervening in. Like I don't know if he did that. I don't know if that's not a good thing, but it's not my place. It's it's God's place. So sometimes these things aren't even about you. Sometimes this is a growth for the other person. So yeah, hard.
No, yeah, no, I can't imagine how hard that would be. I appreciate you sharing that. And just going back to your story, no doubt you faced hardships like that, losing your identity. How long were you in the LDS church?
Ugh, yeah, my whole life. So my family, there's Mormon settlers, and they like go clear back to the back to the back to the very beginning. Like, so they're very important, names in the church: Morgans, Talbots. I mean, these are very like up there people, and that's just been always my life. However, I did have a time with my mom because she's what they call a Jack Mormon. That just means she believed, but she wasn't doing it. And she would send us with the neighbors to go to church and stuff because we moved away from Utah from the time I was 3 till about like 12. And we were in Idaho. So it's a little different there. It's really funny after you go outside of Utah, even though it's so close. Like it's not quite the same type of Mormonism. It's a little bit different, and um, you know, I would say more accepting in a way. But regardless, I felt welcome and wonderful at church with my neighbors, and was baptized and all the things. And then when I ended up at 12, because of a lot of problems with my mom and her husband, basically him trying to kill my mom and or me or whoever he could get a hold of for 10 years. We finally got out of there, and I ended up having to go with my grandma as a ward of the court. So at 12 that happened, and this is in the 90s. Stuff like that really didn't happen that much in the 90s. Like CPS wasn't quite as involved like they are now. But yeah, that was a thing. So my grandma was extremely devout, had gone through the temple,
Mm.
is that family line that I'm mentioning. Well, both sides were, but more her than the others as far as the Mormon pioneers. And I ended up being raised by her until I got married at the ripe old age of 17. So
Oh, wow.
yeah.
My wife also went through the Salt Lake Temple, and she's told me a lot of interesting things, which I can't wait to talk to you more about. My big question is, when did you have the epiphany? Like, was it a series of events that led to you realizing that Mormonism wasn't what it said it was, right? When did you realize that? When did you have the epiphany? When you're like, this is a lie. This is not consistent with the actual Bible. Something's not right here. Was it
I
a series of events, or was it one single event?
No, I think what happened was so everything is good until you go through the temple, in my opinion. If people are going to have an existential crisis in the church, they're probably,
Actually,
yeah.
that's exactly what my wife said. That's
Yes.
exactly what my wife said. Go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yep, and it's so true because they're so good to you, and it's so heartfelt and warming, and you're like doing all these wonderful things for people and service and all this stuff, and then you go through the temple and you're like, what are we doing? You're just like, oh my gosh. And I mean, I remember I hit my grandma, like I was like, hey, what's happening over here? Because nobody prepares you, right? And you have to remember, people are like, well, why didn't you just leave then? I'm like, I don't think you guys understand. And people are like, how didn't you know? It's so stupid. I'm like, clearly you don't know what a cult is, because first of all, my whole family was in, and like they're all there. They're there with you because this is going to be the best day of your life, by the way. And it wasn't. And I'm having a serious mental meltdown, and my grandma is just like, zip it up. Like, and then my great grandma chimes in, and she goes, I don't even know what you're crying about. And what I was crying about was initiatory, which we'll get into. But initiatory, I had to get undressed, and I just got this poncho thing, and it was so bad. And then I was crying, and she goes, I had to be stripped all the way naked and scrubbed with oil in a bathtub when I went through. So don't you bawl to me. Like, I was like, were you naked? Like, that just gave me more questions, right? I was like, what? What is happening?
Wow.
So yeah.
You're telling me details that I was not fully
Oh,
aware of. My
it's so
goodness. How
much.
old were you too? I mean, how old are you allowed to be in the temple?
Young. So you can go through the temple as a married person as soon as you're married. So if you get married at 12, aka Warren
Right.
Jeffs, you're well, they did a different ceremony, but anyway, they probably do scrub naked in the tub because they keep to the old ways and they don't change for nobody, which actually means the FLDS practice Mormonism as it should be, even though that sounds horrible. So I was 21 and I was very young. My husband was a convert to the church. He was Roman Catholic. And so he had to wait a full year to go through the temple and pay your tithing and do all the things before he could go. So I was about 7 months pregnant when we went through because it had been just over a year, maybe like 14 months or something. And I think I might have even been 8 months pregnant. I was pretty far. And so I'm already super emotional. Like this is all happening. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. Like, and I just how I dealt with that is I just didn't do that again for a while. I just didn't go back to that particular thing. I did sealings for married people and other things that I felt more comfortable. But I just didn't do a full session again for a long time. And then I just let it go. Like my grandma said, like just let it go. And so I went on with my life for many, many years as a very devout Mormon, clear until I was 34. But deep in my heart, I knew like this seems so not aligned. Like this seems like it's not quite right. And my grandma I would go to her because she was the one person that had been through the temple that I could go to. And I'm like, I just don't understand what this I don't understand. Why are we doing this? And she's like, "Well, it's just, it's old. It's old. We have the full knowledge. This is what many churches should be doing." And so they kind of hoodwink you in that way, like, "Oh, okay, this is why it felt so weird because it's a super secret thing and I shouldn't be ungrateful." Like basically.
Yeah. And so did your husband say anything about it being weird, or was he just kind of like going with the flow?
Oh, he was down. He was down, down. And so he and I broke up because he ended up in another relationship with a polygamous girl that was already married, which actually doesn't work that way. And it was a whole scandalous thing. And yeah, and he was on drugs and it just got ugly. But what I'm saying is, I think he hook, line, and sinker bought that. And it actually added to his issues because then he was like, well, I'm going to be a god someday. So, and yeah,
Oh, yeah, we'll talk about
yeah,
that, by the way. We'll talk
it
about
was
that.
uncomfy.
I wanna show you yeah. I'm gonna put some things on screen, we'll
I
talk
think
about
he
it.
liked it. Yeah, I think he liked it. So,
So you
yeah.
were sorry, you were 21 when this all happened?
Yes,
21?
and
Yeah.
so when we got married, I was 17 and he was 25. So, just for a little context for people that I was a kid. Like I was seriously a child. And, when you're being raised in abuse and all these weird things, like I don't think I was a typical child for sure. I was graduating that year. We weren't pregnant. There was no reasoning like other than I loved him and didn't want to make a sexual mistake because that is next to murder for Mormons. And we can talk about why. And that will be very important as well. And hopefully I can shed some light on some things. But I just basically got
Yes.
married because I didn't want to lose my virginity. So,
So yeah, I've heard that about Mormonism as a culture, like, people get married out of pressure
mhm,
and security, but not because of, like, letting the Holy Spirit lead, obviously,
no.
or, higher moral reasons, but the reasons are fear, usually fear-based. It sounds like that was the case for you.
I got kicked out. Yeah. Yeah, I got kicked out of my house and everything when they found out they were gonna, I think the reason why not that he didn't love me, not that we weren't talking a little about getting married, but it got really serious when they found out because he was so much older than me. They basically threatened him. He was in the Air Force, like, "You will be getting married, and you're going to do that in the next 14 days, or we are calling your commander." And I was like, "Oh my gosh." And I really wasn't sure if I really wanted to marry him, honestly. Like, this was so pressured, and I'm sure he
Mhm.
didn't know either. And so I was like, "Oh," we'd already made out, like, a lot, and I'm sure he was concerned, what that would mean for him as a 25-year-old man. Also, it was weird that he was making out with a 17-year-old girl, but that's beside the point. But, yeah, so we did it within 14 days of that demand from my and it was not my dream wedding. It was not my dress I wanted to where it wasn't anything that I wanted. So
No, and I've heard this before that couples get very much pressured by the ecclesiastical authority. I mean, it's very much like the Catholic Church. Like, remember how I mentioned at the beginning, like all the wealthiest churches in the world, like the Catholic Church is all about ecclesiastical authority as well. Like, you have to bend the knee to the ecclesiastical whims, and in this particular case, get married because premarital sex is like murder, right? Now, where do they
yes.
get that from? Real quick, let's just talk about that real quick since it's already on the table.
So here's the thing about, and when I bring up these slides about where people get married and how they get married and why they put that pressure on you, and I think it has to do with a few things. Number one, they want you to keep yourself intact, which is a good idea. Don't misunderstand. But I also think they're harnessing it. And as I've learned more and more about magic and Nazis, which seems like it shouldn't fit into this conversation, but it really does, which is super weird. And if you learn about Vril or this, um, sexual energy, okay, that they get from people when you're doing these ceremonies, it actually works probably stronger than drugs, which is how the other way you can talk to entities, right? Is either you're channeling specifically, the magic. Well, that would be hard to explain if you're a Mormon, okay? Or they do it secretly, and that works because there is a certain amount of energy in the room. And why would that be? Two people that really want to get married and haven't done the thing yet, but that's all they can think about. Like the Mormon joke is nobody makes it from the temple to the reception without stopping in a bathroom or in the car, because that's the amount of tension that has then been created for people. Right. So you are like very, I would say, charging the house, right? That's a good way to put it. And so when we talk about that, back in the olden days, they would do this with drugs. That's why to this day, the Catholics come with the incense thing and they're like bringing it out, but it used to be full of a little bit of pot, like they were burning some stuff in there that was psychedelic in nature so that you could be more open to receive certain things, not from God. So yeah, that's part of the reason. I also feel like, it's control. If they can control your underwear, they can control a lot of things. Like, honestly, that is like your most personal item of clothing that you wear. And if they can control that, they've pretty much got you. I mean,
Wow. That
yeah,
is a fascinating way of
yeah,
looking at it. I can't wait to talk about it more. Real quick.
you bet.
So, um, I have, I don't know if you've seen one of these before. You can maybe find this on eBay. You can find a lot of Freemason stuff on eBay. This one's called, it's like a little pocket sized book called Ancient Craft
Oh,
Masonry.
ooh.
And literally,
Oh,
you just open it up. It has a bunch of like, it doesn't even spell out the rituals. Like, I don't know if you can see that, but it's like the words are missing the vowels. So you don't know every little detail of what's being said in scripts for temple rituals. You don't know every single word, but
mhm.
so you have to be trained in it. You have to be initiated. But this is their this is their handbook, and
That's the thing. Yeah.
that's what Mormonism has done as well. And I want to get your take on that. But
Oh.
first, so that's ancient craft masonry. We'll talk about that. What is a cult exactly?
Mhm. Egyptian masonry, is that the one?
This one's ancient craft masonry, and in the
I bet it
jurisdiction,
goes back to
no,
Egypt.
no doubt, it says in the jurisdiction of the Grand Lodge of Free and Accepted Masons of the State of New York. I think I failed to mention
Okay.
you can probably get these on eBay. I was given this by the son of a former 33rd degree Mason who had his
Oh,
own Blue
okay.
Lodge, and so this is one of the documents they
Oh.
get as a Blue Lodge like owner, which I don't totally
Ah.
understand all the nuances of, and that's why I have one of these as well because he just let me borrow
Mm.
them, the Master Mason edition
Right.
of the Bible. And there's some parallels to the Mormon Bible in the fact in the where whether it's the triple
Oh,
combo or the
sh
quad, in the sense that
yes.
there's an index of terms for you to memorize. It's kind of interesting.
Yes, there is. And they have the Joseph Smith translation of the Bible too, just in case you might think that the real Bible is correct if there's a conflict, right? Like if an angel comes to you with another book, don't believe it, but don't you worry because the Bible is correct only in as much as it's translated correctly.
Yeah.
And this is a favorite of the Mormons. And I took seminary for the Mormons for all of the years. I graduated from it, all
Oh
that.
wow, like
Um,
BYU or
No, they do this as a kid. You start this in ninth grade. Mhm.
I think
This
I
is
know
the
what you're talking about
indoctrination.
because when I go to Utah, I often see schools with Mormon training centers next to them. What are those called?
Yep.
What is that?
Yep, that is seminary. They call it
Oh, they
seminary.
call
And
it seminary.
so
Okay.
and it's much like catechism, I would say, like, as far as the teaching, not what they teach, but, like, the age groups and different stuff like that, but you are, like, taking that as a credit, and it actually makes you deficient in credits because it's just considered home release, and so it actually makes you have to take extra credits later so you can graduate correctly, but I did that all of the years, and I have my little seminary certificate and all the things, but they teach you a whole bunch in there. And I was extremely devout. I mean, I was 100% in until I got to the temple. Like, and I wasn't 100% out once I went to the temple because I didn't know what to do. And I didn't even know what a Freemason was until I was 35 years old.
Yeah.
So,
Wow. Well,
and I was one. I guess.
oh my
Oh my
goodness.
gosh.
Yeah, no, I can't wait to talk
Yeah.
about it. So here's what I'll ask you, Heidi, because people have different definitions for this, but I want your take. What is a cult exactly as you understand it?
I mean, as far as just my terms, right? This is a group of people, usually have a prophet or someone that is far more knowledgeable than you are that are leading. And everybody follows this person and these rules, and it's strict adherence. And oftentimes it's familial. They break into these families and everybody's 100% in. This is not like Mormonism is not as innocent as it looks, nor did it start that way. And I don't know if you know this, but Joseph Smith originally started things like the Order of Enoch. How funny
Whoa.
is
Are you
that?
serious? Is that what he called it? That's what he
Yeah,
called it?
I'm dead. He originally called he was trying to do a communal living situation. Sound familiar? Like all of them, like every cult ever. And meanwhile, he's, being with all the women, like every cult ever. And then he calls this the Order of Enoch. And this is how the FLDS, which are the fundamentalists, live, and everything they have and own, including the land and home, and everything they have is underneath the prophet's name. So you don't own anything if you're in one of these fundamentalist sects. And that's why people say, well, okay, why didn't you just sell your house and leave? Well, you don't own your house and you don't own your car and you don't own your business. The church does. So you don't have a way out all the time. And it's changing. I'm not saying I know everything about fundamentalism because I don't. But I do know that is what actually crippled Warren Jeff's whole community when he got arrested because they could take the town and they did.
Oh, wow.
So,
I had no idea. Now, I was familiar with some of these ideas because of the Netflix series Escaping Polygamy, which I recommend
mhm,
for
yes,
anyone listening to this podcast. Check out Escaping Polygamy. You'll learn a lot about the FLDS, which is the fundamental Latter-day
yes.
Saints, which um yeah, they own everything, but so explain to us that real quick. So Joseph Smith appears in the early 1800s.
Yes, so with this
He
one, I'm
begins
gonna
the
share
order.
slides.
Oh,
Yes.
okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. So he starts the Order of Enoch, and then I want you to describe the split between FLDS and LDS because you've already mentioned it a couple times. I think it's important to establish that context a little bit. Um,
Yes, of course, you bet, and it actually is a lot bigger than people might think because it branches into so many, like, most people think, "Oh, FLDS, that's just Warren Jeffs, right? Where you're located." No, it isn't. No, and my brother-in-law is actually Warren Jeffs' nephew. I don't know if you know that about me. And he escaped and he had a really sad story, and it's called Isaac's Story, and it's on Amazon. If anybody would like to look at his story about what happened to him when they removed his wives and his children, and he didn't see them again for almost a
wow.
decade. So, yeah, they can do all kinds of things because if they kick you out, I tell you this, they will reassign your wife. He didn't even know where they were. They went into hiding. So,
My
and it was that
goodness.
fast. So, in the in the course of one day, he made one question out when they went to Texas in the New Zion, and he was talking about basic building stuff. They wanted them to build a sewage system up a hill, and he said, "Look, I want to, Uncle Warren, but this isn't really feasible." Like, he was trying to explain to him, and he was questioning a couple other things, and the next thing he knew, he said, "I need your phone, and you need to take this company truck and drive back and have a meeting with the elders." And by the time he got home, he didn't even know he was in trouble. He just thought it was like some small thing, like an infringement. And when he got home, his house was cleaned out and his children and his wives were gone.
Whoa.
So they can do that, and they do. Yeah.
So, wow, you're really connected then. If this is basically your family,
Yes. Yeah.
my goodness,
This is
you are heavily involved.
and so, like I said, my family's mainstream, but this is my brother-in-law, and he's a great person. And I did an episode with him as well. So something about Isaac or FLDS, I can't remember, but people can go look for that so that they can understand a little better. But there are so many other sects, and we'll get into that because we got to talk about money. But first, I will tell you a little bit about Joseph Smith, because it's critical. And this piece, most people do not know about the church. And why do they hide it? It seems so strange to me. Samuel Smith, he's born in 1714. He was a selectman of Topsfield, Massachusetts. In fact, according to some writers with LDS ties, he was involved with destroying the tea in the Boston Harbor, so the Boston Tea Party. And so he was the ringleader of this Boston Tea Party in idea only. He was part of the people that came up with this idea. And he's this very patriotic guy. And I think, well, why on earth are they hiding this guy? He seems like great. And they're really patriotic. Mormons are super patriotic. So why are they hiding captains? They call him Captain Samuel Smith, even though he wasn't a captain. Well, remember, the Mormons are supposed to be from New York, right? They talk about them being from the burned over district, and they never bring up Massachusetts at all, ever. And so I thought that was weird. So I looked up his father, and his father is also a Samuel Smith, but he is born in 1666, and he is involved in something far more nefarious than the Boston Tea Party. He was involved in the Inquisition, and he was involved of the hanging of Mary Easty, who is very well known in Salem as one of the witches that were hung. So if you look up her history and her accuser, it comes down to Samuel Smith, born in 1666, so the father, and he was critical as part to have her hung. And they say she was innocent. Also, I find it very interesting that the very day she was hung is the very day that Joseph Smith finds the plates, many years later, hundreds of years later. So, yeah, that's a little history on his
Wow.
grandparents that are not from New York, but they are from Topsfield, Massachusetts. And that's very interesting. And this is a little clip of Joseph Smith Sr. So his father is Azazel, not Azazel, but
Almost.
yeah,
Yeah, from Leviticus, is it 16?
yeah,
I believe it is. But
yeah.
yeah, the scapegoat, Azazel.
Yes, and very interesting that they, would name him this if they are extremely piously Christian people, but we'll skip over it and just say, "That's interesting." Put it in our back pocket. And Azael is Joseph Smith Sr.'s father, and it says right here, he was born in Topsfield, Massachusetts. So people will often say, those two people that I just told you about are not the real family of Joseph Smith. Well, then that's really weird, because they all were born in the same area and they all have the same names, and they're all on all these different genealogy trees. Okay. So baloney. Um, if you do deeper digging, you will find the connections, which I've done, which is why we're talking about it now. And so
Hmm.
it's important to know, like, a little background on these people, because if you do know anything about the people that were in the Inquisition, the people that were being hung were usually innocent, and the people that were accusing were usually involved in some pretty weird stuff. So alchemy and magic and different things. So it often makes me wonder, what did Mary Easty know about?
Interesting. Wait, so let me pause you, Heidi. So you're saying that There's like an inversion of reality going on with the Salem witch trials.
Oh, most
Is
definitely.
that right?
Most definitely. And this started
Where
clear back
so
in Britain.
so
Yeah.
so basically, Protestant Christianity was weaponized to eliminate people that were unwanted for, or maybe threatening to some sort of political class. Let's just put it that way. I'll let you explain it though. Is that right?
Exactly. And then, well, and let's think of things. Why did the people come to America? What did they really want? They wanted freedom of religion. And why was that so very important to them? Where Christianity was very well accepted at that time, right? Okay, so it's kind of a confusing thing, but yet when you look into it more, these people that were practitioners of magic and Christian, okay, because that is a possibility, and we're going to talk about that. And Freemasons came here in the boatloads. Well, if you're going to come over here, you have to let some normal people come too. I'm not saying that's all that came here, but most definitely these would be the people that might have been, persecuted at the time. So, not saying that's the only reason or that that was the only persecution, but history speaks. And so they do not hail from New York. If anybody looks into it, they definitely, and the churches sort of started admitting that they're from Topsfield, Massachusetts. Also, they were no poor farmers. His grandfather's buried under the name Samuel Smith Esquire. That's not a poor farmer, that's an attorney. And so these are landowners, these are mayors of the town. These are not poor farmers. So I find it interesting that this is how the church has gone forward with this narrative. That's not how these people were raised. Joseph Sr. had an education. Lucy Mack Smith also had some sort of education, though it was a lay education. She also had education. She was a lay midwife and a healer. So that's also really interesting knowing that
Hmm.
she was Lucy Mack Smith. And we also know that Joseph, even though for many, many years they've always said he was English, well, he has some English in him, but that isn't what Joseph Smith is for the majority, as we know from his DNA. I'll tell you why they had it here in a bit. But we do know that they have a profile now of it, and it is a very rare DNA compilation from Ireland. So this all starts to make a little more sense as we go through things because the Celts had some interesting knowledge, and we'll just put it that way for now. But Lucy Mack Smith, she was no dumb farmer herself. She was quite smart. And she wrote this excerpt, and I'm going to move my little, sorry, footstool. I should probably have muted for that. Anyway, I knocked it over. Sorry about that. This
You're okay.
excerpt from her manuscript in her own handwriting is currently at the Church History Library in Salt Lake City, Utah. And it says this. I'm not going to read the whole thing, just this sentence. Let not my reader suppose that because I shall pursue another topic for a season that we stopped our labor and went at trying to win the faculty of a brack, drawing magic circles, or soothsaying to the neglect of all kinds of business. Wow, that is a loaded statement. Okay, we are talking about soothsaying. We are talking about magic circles, and we are talking about the faculty of a brack, which is not that well known except in certain circles, Masons and magic. Okay. So they're already known treasure diggers. They're known water witching type stuff. They're into all of this. In fact, his father he was in like some kind of society of the rodsmen. And they literally are talking about the water witching stuff. And so they would use this supposedly to hunt treasure. And she's talking about
Hmm.
this faculty of a brack, and I didn't know what that meant. And so I had to go do some research on what that meant. Even though they say, "Oh, she didn't mean that. She was making a joke of the times." Okay, I don't know about that, but I do know she wrote it in her own handwriting. So, I start looking and I find something called Abraxas. Well, I didn't know what that deity was, and it's a very Gnostic deity, and they say it's the God above all gods, okay? That he is above all of the heavens and all of the other gods, because they say there's a God for every day of the week, and that, Jesus, our Jesus, the Hebrew God, is the lowest God. So basically, the lowest part of heaven or the highest pit of hell. And so that's what they think of our God.
Gnosticism.
Yes. Yep. And this is also
Okay.
Yaldabaoth. People can look up this story, or you can go watch the Abraxas thing I just dropped, maybe a week ago or so. So it's on my channel on Spotify. So it will explain, but these kinds of things, and people will say, well, Gnostics, I mean, when did they get that information? Oh, it's been around since Basilides. So we're talking about Basilidean Gnosticism, which is very old. So they would have had access to some of this. And this is, another piece to the puzzle when she's talking about the faculty of abrac. Well, that's just a cutoff of the word abracadabra, right? And when they're
Mm.
drawing these magical things, now I'm not saying it's all negative. This was for healing. And what does Mother Smith do? She's a healer. So I mean, clearly she knows some things, right? And like I said, I'm not saying it's all nefarious, but it's magical practice. And so we have to put all of this in our minds about this family, and they're not dumb farm people. They're educated, they know things, and clearly they know some magical things. So we're just going to keep that in our minds. And this is the very first vision as presented by the church. Now, just so people know, there are 4 to 6 different accounts of this, and they have been basically proven that this first vision that they tote so much was not the true first vision. And one of his relatives tore the true first vision out of his journal and had to cough it up later. Thank goodness he didn't throw it away, but that really happened. And in this, he said, a fit of darkness came over him when he went to pray about what church was true. He went to a grove of trees, which is very interesting. Now, while I'm learning some things in the Golden Bough, and also about Celtic lore, so people can take that for what it's worth. These trees are kind of still held in sort of worship for this day. They don't go worship them, but they're only the church members know which trees are original, and they call them the witness trees. So it gets very interesting. And he said he saw God the Father and the Son, and they came to help him out of this basically fit of darkness. That's what he calls it. And
And where did this happen? Like where was it
he
located?
is in the burned over district at this point. So he
Oh,
just
oh,
goes out. It's near his home. He goes out to pray, and it's still there to this day. The Sacred Grove is a place where many Mormons go to, like, go see it and everything. They've got his original house and all the stuff. So it's kind of been a mecca now for Mormons. My grandma did that trip. She was super into all the things. But anyway, he says he literally saw with his own eyes God the Father and the Son, because they're not the same for Mormons. They don't believe in the Trinity, and neither is the Holy Spirit. So they call it the Holy Ghost. And he says
mm-hmm.
they come to him and say, don't join any of these churches. We're going to send you some more information with a messenger and stuff, and then you'll know more. But actually, what he originally said was the Lord appeared. He didn't say multiple angels and deities or God at all. It's important that we know verbiage when we're talking about things. And Lord is a very interesting word. It's going to become very interesting here soon. So that's in the first account that he ever wrote in 1832. And people can fact check this. This one's later down the line once he fixed it, because then he fixed it to like many angels. And then all of a sudden it was God the Father and the Son. So this is what he said happened at some point after he changed it a lot. And so, sure enough, the messenger comes, and this is Moroni. And most people are familiar with Moroni because he's on the top of most of the LDS temples, the little gold statues. They call him Moroni a lot. I get it. Kind of looks like macaroni, but it's actually Moroni. And this guy's an angel. Okay. That's what he says. But I want to ask you a question, because you've done a lot of studies and church stuff. Is a dead person an angel?
Well, so necromancy is strictly prohibited by God's law in Deuteronomy 18, speaking to the dead in any form at all. And
Right.
people struggle with this even in mainstream Christianity. But yeah, isn't Moroni the bronze
Yep.
statue that's on top of pretty much every single temple?
Usually. They've been backing off of it, but yes, absolutely. So he is that, and honestly, he's not an angel because we know that angels never had bodies, right? They just don't. They're not human. Um, they're not on our level because we're going to ascend to be like angels someday. We will be like the angels. So we know that this is not an angel. And so to your point, what is it? It's necromancy. He says it was a dead person that once lived on the earth. He talks about that. He talks about his history and how he was this great, battlefield warrior and all this stuff. So we can absolutely establish that Moroni is no angel. Okay. And this is what you're referring to on top of the temple,
Mm-hmm.
blowing the horn, which is also interesting in Freemasonry. And so we
Mm.
know that Moroni doesn't automatically give Joseph these plates either, if indeed they ever existed. But we'll just go with the narrative for right now. He has to go back many, many times, and he always goes back on a certain date, and that date is the fall equinox. Okay. And this becomes very important. So we know what we know from people that are surrounding Joseph because he gets into trouble and he goes to court, and multiple people have to write affidavits about his character in this court case. And one of those affidavits, and I need to start including it, is the Hurlbut affidavit. And that is a collection of affidavits basically from this court case against Joseph Smith and talking about, what he was up to. And his neighbor, Willard Chase, has a very interesting one. Now, I dare say Willard wasn't lying, only because they're burning people and hanging people at the stake and whatnot at this time. I don't know that I would bring this story to light if I was Willard, if it wasn't true, because I think I would be a little scared of being accused of witchcraft. But nevertheless, he gives this testimony that Joseph Smith would borrow their black horse and that he would have to dress all in black to go on this meeting every fall equinox to meet this angel and to see if he was worthy enough to get these plates every year at the same time, same place in the middle of the night. So that's a little weird and it doesn't sound too, I don't know, chaste and benevolent to me. One thing is super interesting is this one time he stated in his affidavit that he tried to get the plates and he bent down to get them, and something like a toad, I'm quoting, punched him in the face, became a man and punched him in the face. That's really a strange thing because if you look at some of the things that we know from ancient teachings, we also know that these things are often associated with witchcraft, witches' familiars. Toads are one of them. And also, Baal is really associated with this whole elemental spirit, turning into a man type thing. And people can look this up. And like I said, I need to do a deep dive on it to present. I did it, but I need to show people what I'm talking about. But this has been documented in other ancient religions. And I also find it super interesting that the Mormons call their God Elohim. Well, people get mad at me about this one too all the time, but you have done a lot of studying. So, do you know other than God, Elohims can be something different, right?
Yeah, totally. So this goes back to the King Follett discourse for those who are listening, right? Where Joseph Smith said, "You can be gods," and he twists and misquotes the fact that the Bible does refer to followers of God as sons of God, but there's more to it, isn't there, Heidi?
Oh, it's so much more. So I like to share this. This is something that is really important because people get mad at me. And I had to look up specifics because the last time I said this, Elohim can be a title for entities that are not of our natural world. Okay. So spirits and different things, but also, and this is a quote, people, Bel, Bel, Kronos, Elohim, and other designations can be names of Saturn. Bel is the reasoning of the sacred mysteries, and Saturn and Sol, Bel and the Syrian Kronos, the name being derived from the Quran to shine. Okay, so we're having a fully different conversation here where he's calling something Lord and where they call their God Elohim, it's got me a little bit concerned, right? And this is why I started researching some things, because I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Are we not talking about God? Like God?
Mm.
Right? The Abraham, Isaac, Jacob God? Like, what are we talking about here? Right? So
Right,
it's
right. It's a double
research.
entendre, right?
Yeah.
Double meanings, double entendre. Yeah.
And they love to do this, because this, if you are confused about what you're worshiping and one day you find out it could be Lucifer, how scary would that be? And let me tell you, it's pretty scary. So, and I like to present all this with as much facts as I can, just because I know this is hard to digest for people. Does your grandma know this? That's the nicest Mormon ever? No. Just like in Masonry, they have something called porch masons. And porch masons are the people that just go there for the dinners, and they're nice and they help, with everything. And they're doing all these drives all the time for money for charity. And that's great. But at the top level, and I'm talking the top level of things, whether it's Masonry or Catholics or Mormons or whoever, I don't care. There is always one thing that I know to be sure, for sure. And that is absolute power corrupts absolutely 100% all the time.
Mm.
So we start talking about money, we start talking about different things, and that is so important for people to remember. Like, your grandma doesn't know this, I promise you. If you knew the nicest Mormon ever, I'm sure they didn't know this. And even if they did, they don't want their throat slit for telling. So we'll get there. But for nearly 200 years, the official church history never said anything. This is what I understood as being a Mormon about a seer stone. They said Joseph Smith got those plates on this dark night, dressed in all black, like I told you, shortly after his eldest brother, Alvin, died, even though the angel said, please bring him with you. And he couldn't, because his brother was dead. And then they ran an article in the newspaper about this, and that he was dead, and that they were going to dig him up. So I want to tell you guys what this basically says. It says this: you guys are all talking crap about us, and we didn't dig him up or do anything to his body. Why are they talking crap about them like that? That seems really weird. So we're going to dig him up to prove that we didn't dig him up and show you guys that we didn't do anything. Oh, wow. That's weird.
That's very strange. My
Yeah.
goodness. And this is documented
This is
history.
real. This is, anybody can look up this article, Palmyra, September 25th, 1824. This is Joseph Smith Sr. running this article, which ran 6 times. And they don't deny this.
Heidi, Heidi, real quick. I just want to make sure I got the name right. Whose affidavit was it that Smith needed to go during the fall equinox to meet with Moroni for the plates? Whose
Willard
affidavit
Chase,
was that?
the
Who wrote it?
Willard Chase affidavits that are called the Hurlbut Affidavit Collection. So people can find that, and I'll look up. I need to add it in here because it got questioned, and also people will say this about what I told you there. No, that was a salamander story, and that's not real. Oh, well, it was real, and it wasn't a salamander. But you're right. Salamanders sound way better than a toad, which is linked back to witchcraft, whereas a salamander is an elemental and it's not such a bad thing. But no, that was probably done on purpose, but I can't prove that. So the Hurlbut affidavits are a collection of affidavits from Joseph Smith's neighbors, and it's under Fair Latter-day Saints. If anybody wants to look that up, they are welcome to do that, and it has all of them there. They will say that these people, the Hurlbuts, hated them and that they're just making trouble for them. So I can prove
Right.
a little bit how that's not so true. But yeah.
There's always what I've noticed is there's always an answer. There's always a rebuttal to every question that might compromise the church in any way, shape, or form. Right,
They
Heidi?
are so good at the answers. You literally, what just came out of your mouth is exactly what my husband says all the time. He's like, they have an answer for everything, whether it be the premortal, the afterlife, like they know it all. So yeah. But in this case, they're sleeping by a dead guy for weeks at a time, and now they're gonna dig him up. And just in case the neighbors see that, they've got it covered. They've got it covered. And then all of a sudden, Joseph gets the plates. So people joke that, the brother had a hand in Mormonism. I'm not saying they did anything, but, whatever. Yeah. So the agenda,
So they did dig up
they dug him
Joseph
up.
Smith's brother's body.
Not only did they dig
Sorry, I'm not,
no,
go
no.
ahead, go ahead. I'm not sure if I caught all that, but go ahead.
Not only did they dig him up, they're going to dig up Joseph Smith someday too, and they're going to dig up his brother. They have kind of a problem about letting the dead rest. So we'll get into why, but yes, they like to dig dead people up, just saying. But they're not witchcraft at all. Right. Okay. We'll talk about it. So my whole life I was told those books and the plates and the little curtain was the whole deal and that was it. And then all of a sudden, one day, the South Park episode came true in real life right in front of my very eyes. And they bring out this hat, and this is the current prophet of the church. And this is Russell M. Nelson, who is now, I'm going to say, a questionable member of Skull and Bones. Why do I say that like that? Because now people are going back and forth saying he wasn't, even though he's confirmed an Allen Key member, which I have proof of. I'm going to be doing a whole thing on this for the University of Utah. Yes, it is a different section of Skull and Bones. It's not at Yale, but I will tell you this, it was set up by Yale alumni in 1809, and they won't name who did it, but I have the name. But what I'm saying is these are family members of the Yale people as well who came here to set this up. These people have been in the club since the club began. So, long story short, they have their own Skull and Bones. And Russell M. Nelson is Allen Key. Allen Key is the people that choose Skull and Bones, but he's not in Skull and Bones. Right. Okay. Whatever. But he brings out this hat, and I'm like, what on earth is happening? What I didn't ever hear about the hat. Why is this a thing? You know, I mean, they've been sitting here telling us all this time that wasn't true ever since South Park came out. Well, South Park is pretty historically accurate. So just to let people know that, I mean, really. So this is what we really have instead of those studious people, studying the book and the plates. This is kind of what was really going on. And so Joseph was a seer. And it was noted that from his birth. In fact, he's been called a moonchild by Crowley. Crowley wrote a whole bunch about him in the book Moonchild and specifically names Joseph Smith. But he had,
Are you
I am
serious?
dead serious.
I've never caught that. He wrote about Joseph Smith in his Moonchild novel.
Yes, he did. And not only that, he specifically names him and he speaks about the Lamanites, and he loved Joseph Smith, even though he hated religion and religious people. I did a whole thing.
What?
I did an episode on this. Let me tell people which one it is, because this one is fascinating. And I did.
Guys, hold
I'm
on,
sorry.
Heidi. This is mind blowing. This is mind blowing. Guys, did you just listen to that?
Yep.
The father of modern Satanism, Aleister Crowley, loved Joseph Smith. Go ahead, Heidi. I'm blown away.
No, you're good. So that episode 153 is called The Seer and the Beast, Crowley versus Joseph Smith. So I want people to understand that Crowley knew Joseph Smith because like recognizes like. He didn't know him in real life. He knew what he was because he saw what he did. And he actually very much looked up to him. And what I'm going to tell you here very quickly is, he was a practitioner of Solomonic magic. And I can prove this in so many ways. So, no, it isn't folk magic. No, it isn't insidious. Solomonic magic is serious. And it's very two magics that you don't want to mess with. He was involved with both Enochian and Solomonic magic. So people talk about this to this day. If you go on to Reddit and you start talking about what about this magic? They're like, don't do that at home. Don't do that by yourself. Don't do that unless you know what you're doing. Like even people in dark arts are worried about this. Okay. So Joseph was dialed in, and he was also born in a call. He was named a seer at his birth. I mean, he's born on the feast day for Jupiter, just so you guys know, the god Jupiter. And he loved this seer stone, and he'd put it in the hat and he'd block out all the light. And here is the seer stone. The church admits it now. They don't care. Fun fact, Willard Chase found this rock while digging a well on his property with Joseph Smith. He asked to borrow it and he refused to give it back. So Mormonism is built upon a stolen rock. And they say this is his favorite rock, but I don't think so. He had quite a few of them. This was Sally Chase's rock that got him super interested in things. This rock right here, if I had to be a guessing gal, I would say this is the special one because nobody's ever photographed it and all they've done is draw it and they've never let it out of the vault. So that's my guess.
Mm.
They have tunnels and vaults underneath the temple in Salt Lake City,
It-
much like the Vatican. So, and this is a little uh, explanation of the toad and the plates, something like a toad. And this is also something that Willard Chase included in his affidavit when they were treasure digging one night, and he drew out what Father Smith did on the ground. And people will recognize some of these signs because they are used in Solomonic magic today. So the one part they left out is they slit their fattest black sheep's throat and bled it all over the circle, but I guess they didn't want that piece out so much.
Wow.
Yeah, it gets weird. So Smith family relics. This gets even more weird as if it wasn't weird enough. But this really sealed the deal for me. And also led me to the Enochian piece of everything. So Joseph Smith died with this Jupiter talisman in his pocket. According to his own wife, Emma, this talisman was one of his most prized possessions. And the reason why we know it is his and no one else's is because he died with his brother. They died together. So sometimes they'll be like, no, that was Hiram's. No, that they do this little game. And so this she wanted back. So she had to say it was his to get it back. And she did. So when you go to the symbols that are on here, if you see this pentacle and then you look right here, if you look right here, and people can look it up for a better, closer look, it is the same. And it says, okay, this defendeth and protecteth those who invoke and cause the spirits to come. And when they appear, show this unto them, and this they have to obey. Okay. So here's the thing. The church will say he had this to protect him against curses of other people sending things his way. Now, what did it say about the spirits? Those who invoke and cause the spirits to come. That's saying he did it. Nobody sent them. He wasn't protecting himself from, spirits that bad people sent his way, right? uh, so that drives me crazy.
This is extremely eye-opening, guys. So just based because I've done a lot of research into these types of things. So yeah, he put the Yod-He Vav-He Tetragrammaton name of God, which is in the Hebrew Masoretic text,
Right.
but no doubt he put it there superstitiously for protection. But one thing I find interesting is the very cherished symbol of Judaism, which
That's
goes
right.
back to Solomon
It's
and his descent into paganism, the hexagram, which is Crowleyan.
yes.
I don't know what your thoughts on there on that, but man, so many people give me pushback when I talk about the Star of Remphan that Stephen the Martyr spoke against in the Book of Acts chapter 7. People get so upset, but it's like, guys, it's intrinsically a pagan symbol of Jupiter. What are your thoughts on that, Heidi?
And if you look at old videos, even the Jewish people have tried to get away from this. Many Jewish scholars have been like, that wasn't ours, and I'm not wearing that. I can't remember what rabbi it was, and I've got to find it. But he was like very popular, like he was a top guy, and he was like, that is not ours. We do not want that. So
Wow. I'd
no.
love to see that if you could pull
Oh,
that up
I'll
at some
find it.
point,
Yeah, I'll find it.
send me an email after
You bet.
the
I'll
podcast.
find it because it'll be easy to find because this one particular guy was like, not ours. Um, so keep this in mind while we're talking. Like I'm finding all this stuff at once, and I'm probably, even though I was already out, I was having kind of an existential crisis because I was like, what is all this? This is witchcraft. This is witchcraft. Like that's all I do.
Uh,
Ah.
Heidi, this was post 2020.
Yes, this was after
Okay.
2020. So I was shocked. Even still, even though I knew the church was wrong or whatever, I never thought it was this. I never even would think about that. Like I couldn't have dreamed this in my wildest dreams. People are always like, "You're lying." I'm like, "I wish I was lying because some of this stuff that I found is really weird and very concerning." So, the reason why I speak out is because if this is all true, which I know it to be true, other people can look this up all for themselves so they can know it's true themselves. But when I knew it was, I knew one thing about my brothers and sisters left in the church, including my family members. they are practicing something they don't understand. And it goes far back to extremely ancient magical things. And they're not worshiping the God that they think they're worshiping. And it's concerning. So, for those out there that, might be wondering or whatever in the middle, I really say go find all these things for yourself. Prove it to yourself that, the seal and intelligence of Mars is engraven on this ceremonial dagger or an atame that is the father's dagger. So we're not just talking about Joseph learning this from the Jewish guy he studied with, which he did. We're talking about stuff.
Wait, who was that?
I can find that one pretty easy while we chat.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm
You're
sorry.
good. I need to
But
put
no,
it
yeah,
in there.
his father. Yeah,
This
you're
was
talking about his father too.
Oh, his father didn't study under anybody Jewish, but Joseph did. And so they'll blame it on that. They'll say, well, that's because he studied with this guy, and his name was Joshua Seixas, a Jewish educator in the early 1830s studying biblical Hebrew. Seixas documented that Smith attended a full course of Hebrew lessons underneath his tutelage in 1836. So just so people know that, you can look it up. The influence of sexist, I hate to say his name that way, but that's how I think it is. I don't know. Sexist teachings, which utilize distinctive Sephardic transliterations. Okay. So people need to know that this course was completed by March of 1836. And he certified in March that he had attended all of the courses and completed this. Okay. So the problem is some of this is much older than that. Like this atame is the father's. And the reason why I know that is because this is underneath his birthday and his signs, much like Jupiter is for Joseph. So, yeah. So this is what we have, their ceremonial or atame ceremonial dagger. This is another copy of the little seals up close so that people can see. And anytime you see the word intelligence of anything in magical speaking, we're talking about a demon. So people can look that up. Intelligences are not angels, they're not God, they're demons. So
And same with Moroni, right? I feel like we never really quite
Moroni, yeah,
finished that thought. We
I
didn't quite finish
feel
that. But yeah, Moroni.
I feel that Moroni is a fallen angel or a demon. Yeah. And
Yeah.
so he's definitely not an angel because angels never ever ever have had human bodies ever. Period. It's a period. Like they can't, that's not the same thing. And if we're talking about a spirit, we're talking about necromancy, as you clearly pointed out, which clearly they have no problem practicing because it's a lot. Because we're also going to talk about a few things with his brother there. And like I said, I think the Smiths paid in blood for what happened and what they gave. And I'm not talking Joseph's blood. I mean, after Joseph started this whole thing and right before he gets the plates, his father loses his eldest son, Alvin. Okay. He accidentally got poisoned because he had constipation from the doctor. This is the story. And so he gave him too much of whatever it was and it accidentally killed him. Well, that is his oldest son. And in a Faustian bargain, there is nothing more a bigger price than your eldest son, period. In witchcraft, in Faustian bargains, in this kind of stuff, that is the most precious gift you can give. And also, his wife went with him on this night, and she was, they were getting married. I think they just barely been newly married. And she is pregnant shortly after this. She gives birth to a son. He is severely deformed. He only lives moments, and his name is also Alvin. So they have both paid in blood with their eldest sons by the time Joseph gets these plates. So
I'll just point out what I'm seeing, the pattern that you're presenting so far is everything that witchcraft is into is an inversion of the Bible. Because we're supposed to bless our firstborn sons. We're supposed to, that's a good thing. There's nothing wrong with that. But the occult flips that on its head and says, offer me your firstborn child on the altar right now. Which technically Abraham did with Isaac, but no, he didn't because God was just testing him. It
And
wasn't actually
he
a real
never let it
blood
complete.
sacrifice.
Yeah, he never let that
Yeah.
complete. So, but also people will push back on this and they will give the exact thing that you just, well, what about Isaac? And I'm like, I know, but I mean, it's different because it wasn't completed. But yeah, they'll say, well, your God's a blood crazed maniac that wants you to kill children. That's, that's what the Gnostics like to come back with. So, yeah, people have to work that out for themselves. But I will say this, Joseph Smith and Joseph Smith Sr. both paid that price dearly. So, we're looking at another piece of the puzzle here. And I truly believe this is what we're talking about when we talk about Masonry for the Smiths. We have to understand that Freemasonry had only been organized with the Scottish Rite for about 50 years when Joseph Smith starts all this business. That's not very long. It's not very long to get to him in the Americas or become very widespread. And Joseph Smith had a really good friend. His name was Lumen Walters. And Lumen, like I'm not even kidding, like light bearer Lumen. And Lumen Walters was considered godless, and he was named as a conjurer. And even the mother mentions it in her book right here. And he came back from Europe, and he was considered godless, this godless guy, and they ran him out of town. So this becomes a very good friend to Joseph. And I think he might have possibly been the one to introduce him into this, order of Mitzrayim, the Mitzrayim rites or Martinist order. And that's the picture I showed you here. And they are a practicing order, which is very old French order. And it goes back to Cagliostro, if anybody knows about Cagliostro and Martin. They came together, and there was one other, Willermoes. I did an episode on this all about Martinism, and I feel like it explains it much better because they are a practicing order. And that means they don't just read about magic, they practice it. And one thing's for sure, they say they go out and they conjure spirits on the fall and spring equinox. Well, we know that Joseph received the plates on the fall equinox. Now they'll lie and say he didn't because he went out on the day before, but it was late in the middle of the night after midnight when he received them. And that's documented all over. People can look at that. So I think that this is what he was up to. They're, like I said, Solomonic practicing order. And I think it explains a whole lot of what you're going to see.
Well, real quick, Heidi. So, Order of Mitzrayim. You're familiar with Mitzrayim being basically a transliterated word for Egypt, right?
Right. These are Egyptian rites, yes. But this is what they called it, And so these are the three guys I just told you guys about. And a lot of times people don't even know about this order, like at all. And so, like I said, I was just researching, trying to find the answer. Number 117 is the podcast for people that want to look this up. And it's just a basic overview of how this came to be. A lot of the arts that they practice were actually from Haiti. So, as well. So, Egyptian and Haiti influence there. And people can do with that what they want. They can look this up. A lot of people say, no, that's not true. Whatever. It's not, it can be not true for you, but it surely aligns better than the Scottish Rite. So I can't prove it, but I definitely think it's interesting. So this is the parchments in that little pouch that Joseph had with his seer stone and the hat. He had something called a layman's pouch around his neck. And that would be something they would use to carry parchments in. And these are the parchments found with the brothers when they died. So they'll go back and forth and say, no, 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 that was Hiram's. No, no, no. Okay, who was working with the Jewish Kabbalist? It wasn't Hiram. Okay, he didn't care. This likely much more aligns with Joseph Smith, but I cannot 100% prove it. And this right here, this is a spirit, and this is what led me to Dr. John Dee. Because without that particular spirit, I would have never known that he was involved in that at all. The rest of these, this is called the Jehovah parchment because of all the names of God that are in it, which doesn't mean it's a holy thing. It means they chuck everything at it to defend themselves. And if you've noticed, it's also got the Knights Templar cross in this. And I dare say the Templars have a lot to do with good old Joe. But, trying and proving that is hard. But
Right.
the Templars came up from through Canada way before Christopher Columbus ever made it anywhere near here. And they mixed in with, different people. And there's a whole bunch about this. And I just did like 2 or 3 different episodes on the Templars, and people can check it out. But there's quite a bit of proof that they were here. Lanzo Meadows is where people can look for that. That's the town they originally came into. And this is the second parchment called the Holiness to the Lord parchment, which people that are LDS or ex-LDS will recognize immediately because this is on every temple. The Holiness to the Lord is what they put on the temples. And so some of these angels, see this one, or demons or whatever, these ones don't have seals around them, if you notice. That's because they don't need it. And that means they have a working relationship with these things. I had to look this up. I don't just know this. I'm not just saying this. Like, I had to study this a whole bunch, but that's what they say. And so people can see like these two have seals because this is all Solomonic magic. And, this shield here, there's a lot in here, and this is all deciphered down at the bottom. We won't go through all of it because it becomes tedious, but I will say this.
Wait, so Heidi. Oh, go ahead. Go
Oh,
ahead.
you're
Finish
good.
that thought.
That
I do have a question.
you're good, and I have a few that are more up close. And this information can only come from certain places at this time because they don't have the internet. They're pretty limited. Plus, he's some dumb farm boy that can read, but he's studying Hebrew and finished it. Okay. Whatever on that. But this information here specifically comes from the Magus, okay, Francis Barrett's Magus. It comes from the Discoveries of Witchcraft by Reginald Scott, also Ebenezer Sibley, Occult Sciences, and the last one is Liber Officium Spiritum. Now, none of these have anything to do with the Bible. It's silliness. And right here is the 2 seals that were on the previous page. And what is this about? Witchcraft. And where do they hail from? Right by Salem. So I'm just saying, people can fill in what they want there.
So Heidi, by seal, you mean one that's encircled, like a sequence or a pictograph of symbols that are encircled, meaning it's closed off, right?
It's a command, and it really pisses them off. So supposedly I don't do magic, but I've heard that they really hate when you force it. It's like a forcing. They have to do it. They have to do what you say. But with this Raphael star, it's open, so it can do what you ask it to, but like they don't necessarily make it happen, if that makes sense. So they're working together on a more friendly basis instead of just constant encircling. So, and this is another one that it didn't have a seal as well. So obviously, and why is he worried about being attacked against witches and evil spirits? I don't know, maybe because you are one, but whatever. This Jubanla Dace, this Guardian right here, this one's over national affairs, enterprises, and wars. The only other time I've ever seen this one was with Dr. John Dee. And that's what led me to his works. And I started studying things, even though I was like, you want me to read an occult book, God? Like, this seems very crazy. And I was like, no. And then I talked to my mom about it first, and I was super worried. And I just felt really led. My mom said, absolutely don't do it. No way. A bunch of people were really like, no, don't do it. And I kept praying and praying. And I was like, man, I think I have to read this book. And I finally did. And I got a lot of answers there. So, yeah. Enochian and Solomonic magic he was an adept. He knew. Also, weirdly, this is a Masonic password, Juban Ladace. So just so people know, I don't know which one. I just know it was. And people can look that up. But yeah, it protects
So
against putrid infection and sudden death. And what do we know about Joseph Smith? He had a bad infection when he was young. He had typhoid. So yeah, he almost died. I wonder if his mom made a bargain.
oh boy. What can I mention
You
something
can
real
ask
quick?
anything.
I I'm so sorry, Heidi. I feel like I'm interrupting you a lot. It's just my goodness, there's so
I
much
know.
overlap between what I've had to study and what you're presenting, I'll say this. So you brought up John Dee. This is one of the most popular books of Enoch on Amazon. I actually, it's just the cover.
Mhm.
The reason I actually disposed of it properly is because it had the whole diary of John Dee in
Oh,
there with the Enochian alphabet, and I didn't feel right having that in my house.
mhm, mhm. I get it.
Personally, that's just me.
No,
So,
I get it, and a lot of the things that I will get are, like, a roundabout or whatever, like, I don't own Sibley's witchcraft book, I didn't buy any Crowley books, I do that stuff on the internet because it scares me. And I know it shouldn't scare me, but we all
well,
have our limits.
yeah. Well, I mean, if you look at the New Testament, you see how I forget which Grecian or an Asian minor town they started burning books of witchcraft,
Mhm,
and it's because these works, the Enochian alphabet, all these things. This is John Dee's manuscript, by the
mhm.
way, 1583.
Yes.
He received this from fallen angels. He claims. I
Yes,
mean,
this book
they're telling you.
that one's a good one about it, and it doesn't have, like I mean, it is written by an occultist, but I feel like it's not uh, too nefarious if people want to read it. Basically, it tells about John Dee and about how they came across this, which is hugely important. And the whole reason why it's important is because look, like he's talking about these angels and these spirits and things talking to him, and they say that they're angels, quote unquote angels, but they're not. They lie. And then it gets him in serious trouble. And we know that later his life is ruined by what they basically make him do, you know? I mean, he had a
Hmm.
choice. He could have chosen to not sleep with his, swap wives. But look, this guy was pious. He was super Christian. He was all about God. And the next thing you know, boom, he's writing a book which becomes many religions and they have a sexual transgression. And Zabbatai Zevi, he talks about, bringing about like basically hurrying up the apocalypse by sinning. And guess what? Every single time
Yeah.
these people end up like this. Hey, Joseph Smith, write a book and make it a religion and sleep with as many women as you can, like, and get all these wives. And hey, Muhammad, he had a fit of darkness. He literally explains it the same way. And then an angel comes and he didn't write the book, but the people memorized it because they were non-written people. And then it becomes what? A religion. And he marries a 7-year-old and consummates at 9, and then he induces like polygamy stuff too. Like all these people, you can get dark with it. You can do Crowley, and everybody skips on Awas and the book of Awas. Well, how did that come about? Like, oh, I'm on my honeymoon in Egypt. And all of a sudden, this thing appears to his wife, and they write down everything it says, and it becomes the book of the law. And even Crowley later says, I wish I never wrote it. He's a liar from Crowley.
Mm.
Like, come on. Like, I mean, Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard, they're out in the desert. Why did Crowley not have to have a wife swap or what? Because he was already doing all that. He was already doing it. He didn't need anything else. He was giving them everything. And Parsons and Hubbard, about their workings in the desert, and they're doing some weird stuff. They're doing some sexual magic. And what happens after that? They write what? A book, and it becomes Scientology. It's over and over and over again. It's the same story forever.
Mm.
So, it's very interesting to me that it always seems to end up like with good intentions, and then the next thing you know, your wife swapping. PS, if God's talking to you and he tells you to do that, it's probably not God. Like, don't do it. Yeah, don't do that because I get it. Like, it might feel cool to have God talk to you, but like, not like that, you know?
Right.
Mm-mm. And so, I don't know if you can you still see these okay?
Yeah,
Or do I
absolutely.
need to share? Okay, cool. And
Yeah.
so these are just a few others that were on there, but people can look at this and, like, they can say whatever they want about, him having these parchments, and maybe they're the brothers and maybe all these things. Okay, I'll give you, benefit of the doubt on a lot of maybes. But at the end of the day, when you're looking at all this and we know what it becomes, you know, we have to question what is really happening there. Like, why? Right? Like, that
Hmm.
seems so strange. And then it gets even weirder. Let's see, we already showed this part. I want to show a couple things that happened after. And yes, okay. So, and what the Mormons do in the temple. So, this is a baptisms for the dead font. And remember, I said to put it in the back pocket about Baal. And people will say, no, this just represents the 12 tribes of Israel. And that's what the church says. That, okay, great. But also, most of the time, they're golden calves.
Mm-hmm.
It's very interesting to me that they're having chaste children do these baptisms, and you don't do them just for the people, you do them as the people. You are the human proxy. You are the proxy in all of these situations for the temple. All temple work is for dead people except the first time. When you go for yourself for the first time, that is for you. Every single time after that, and you can go tons, twice a day, 3 times a day if you want. You All those works are for dead people, and you don't do it for them, you do it as them. You take on that name. So I find that very interesting. And they start this with kids usually around 12 to 16. Grown-ups can do them, but they usually don't. They usually save it for the kids. Also, we know Joseph was eventually martyred, and he gave, I don't know if you know this, but the last thing they say he did was the widow's call for distress. So,
Oh,
will no
yeah.
one
Can you
help the
explain that?
widow's son?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Can you explain that?
it's the Masonic hail, basically, and they don't deny that Joseph Smith is a Mason anymore. If you go to LDS websites, like True Blue LDS real websites, they'll tell you that he was. They're like, oh well, lots of them were. So what? Like basically now. Um, so they admit that freely, that Hiram and Joseph, and they were both in the Anandagua. That's where they had their rights, whatever done. They have the proof and everything. They don't care. They don't find a problem with it anymore. So they'll just say it was a thing of the times. So he gave that distress call. Basically, a Mason is supposed to help another Mason if he gives that call, but the Masons were definitely in the group, and he was doing polyamory with other people's wives. So I'm pretty sure he didn't care at that point. So, yeah.
Wow. And so what's this that you have on the screen here? The coffin cane?
Sorry, my back is she fixed that for me. So the coffin cane is something that I find extremely interesting. So after they die, I want people to know what they did. Speaking of digging up dead bodies, they dug Joseph and Hiram up, and this is in the church museum. So you guys can go look at these if you want. This wooden cane has hair embedded in the knob, which is reported to be braided locks of Joseph and Hiram Smiths. This also was made from the wood of the coffins holding the Smith brothers before they were moved to their final resting place. So they dug them up, and their rotting, decaying bodies had been going all over this oak. By the way, it is oak, which is super interesting if you read The Golden Bough. We did an episode on that recently, so people can go look at that. But again, back to Celtic lore, we've got these oak canes, and they're infused with dead juices from the boys rotting, and they made them into these canes, and then they made a brotherhood with the people that received these canes, and they took an oath, and they became the brotherhood of the black sticks. And this is another one of those. They made multiple ones, and they're on display at the Church History Museum. So I'm not lying. People can go look at those if they want. If you want to go see a dead guy's rotting corpse cane. They also took an oath to avenge their deaths in this Black Sticks group and against the United States of America.
Huh.
Because they were not always so the FLDS still practice this. It is something called bleeding the beast. They A lot of people don't understand that Joseph Smith was running for president of the United States when he got offed. So he was actually the first candidate of presidency to be assassinated. And so people can look that up. But yeah, they they took out this oath that they would basically overthrow the government. And in the Washington, D.C. Temple, there is a replica for basically an office for the president, because they think the prophet of the church will be the president soon. when the government falls. So
Where is that, Heidi? Is that's not obviously going to be found in any of the writings of
no,
Mormonism, like the Pearl of
no,
Great
it's
Price or
in
Doctrine and
no,
Covenants. This is more what? Is it just
that's
oral
secret.
tradition?
No, I think there's been confirmation. It's inside the Washington, D.C. temple. So
Mm.
everybody knows that this is part of their teachings, that the government will fall, and not that they'll help it fall, just that it will fall, and that the church will then be put into place to run America. And so they built an office because you have to have an office. Even if the world's exploding all around you, they're ready.
Oh my.
The
Well,
FLDS still believe this. Yeah.
I'm sure they do. Yeah, they have 300 billion to their name as of 2024. So I guess
Speaking of which, yeah.
you could say they have the financial resources. But go ahead, Heidi.
We're about 10 slides away. Are you good?
I'm
I know
good.
I'm taking forever. Okay.
No, you're
To
great.
your point, I will switch this around a little bit and I'm going to show you something that fits exactly with what you just said about the money. So I want you guys to understand something. Not only does the church have a lot of money, but the people that are in the church, like this man right here, Jared Burchell, who is Elon Musk's number one money man, he takes care of his money. He's a Mormon. And Howard Hughes, the people behind him, they were Mormon. And, all these Mormon people behind these very wealthy, wealthy, wealthy people. It's very interesting. They pay their tithing. So they pay a 10% tithe. There's no passing the bowl around and we hope you give. There's none of that. That's silly to them. They take their taxes in and you have to prove with your taxes that you paid exactly what you should pay on your gross. And if you didn't, then you can't go to the temple and you don't get your temple recommend, which is kind of a stain on your existence because only the best of the best of the best go to the temple. So when it's Ward Temple night and Susie isn't there, people start to question. So, you know, you want that. And also, you're doing important work for dead people. And so, I really encourage people to look at my series with the Mormon Mafia because it will consistently show time and time again how there are very important, like businessmen that are Mormon behind almost every like gigantic billionaire that we've had. And Bill Gates, interestingly enough, he even comes up. So these guys met at the Boring Company digging tunnels for the church. No,
For the
for
church.
whatever. I'm teasing. Am I teasing? Well, let's see. The church does have some tunnels. I highly doubt Elon Musk was involved in this one because it's so much older. But this is where they blew out the side of a mountain to apparently house their genealogy studies. But this has been said by many, many people that this was actually used for like UFOs and stuff. And they're very, ingrained in the CIA or three-letter agencies and whatnot. So just so people know, this is apparently the genealogy building, which is so protected that there are armed guards with actual automatic guns. They're like automatic rifles to make sure you don't get in there. And that is if you even get to the entrance, because it is a one way in, one way out with razor wire and the whole 9 yards. But it's just genealogy. Don't worry about it. See,
Where is this?
this is here in Utah. This is called the Granite Genealogy Center. So no
Oh
one can
my.
ever go in there, and they don't have any kind of tours or anything in there. But they did post some pictures because inquiring minds want to know. And so this is one tiny little hallway of the genealogy that they have. And it's a lot. And just because you're not a Mormon doesn't mean they don't have your information. They probably
Mm.
do. And so they're very involved, like I said, with three-letter agencies. And just so people know and are aware, they do not own 23andMe, but they own the parent company called FamilySearch.org, and everything that is inside of that was created underneath Howard Hughes. And it was Howard Hughes Dynamics where they were putting in the information to digitalize all of the genealogy underneath Robert Gay. So he worked and was the number one advisor, not a nursemaid, to Howard Hughes. He also ended up in a really sweet spot after Howard Hughes's death. But I do like to put this in here, 23andMe, I just happened to get on one day, and every single person of 23andMe resigned the day that Diddy was arrested. Every single one of them.
Oh, did he?
Yep.
Mm.
And that is so weird. But I will say this, her sister, Ann Warchicki, is the lady that's over 23andMe. Her sister was over YouTube, and she died unexpectedly a month before this, and her son died unexpectedly 4 months before that. So whenever you see this trail of death, you might want to look into it a little bit. It's odd at best. I don't know what's going on there, but I do know how FamilySearch.org got all their information to start all of this. And it's another very important person. I thought I had her picture on here, but maybe it's on a different slide. But the person that they got that from, and this is a declassified CIA doc, is somebody with the last name Gates. And that's so funny because, Gates is the number one stock holding for the Mormon church. You know that's their number one in their portfolio. So the biggest landowner in America for farming is, do you know who?
Is it Bill Gates?
It's Bill Gates. But guess who number two is?
Go ahead.
The Mormon church, the Mormons.
Ooh.
And the funny thing is you would definitely be kind of in bed with the person that's your number one portfolio holding because you want them to do well. And the even funnier thing is that yes, his mom, not his dad, which everybody focuses on, Bill Gates's mother, was not working for IBM when this occurred, but she was on the board, and she was a critical piece to help the LDS Church after World War II get all of the records from the Holocaust print-offs, the little cards that showed everybody's genealogy and who they were from and whatnot. They were also not hurt at all in the war. They were not treated as badly, and they followed all of the stuff that Hitler put down. They also did his genealogy. They baptized him and made sure all his work was done. And I do have a copy of that because they wanted to make sure, just in case, if Hitler went to heaven. So.
All right, Heidi. So hold on. So just because some of the things you said, I know are going to go over people's heads. So the LDS Church takes tithing money, which you are obligated to pay if you want to be in good standing and temple recommended, so you can actually be an actual Latter-day Saint. They take that tithing money, 10%. Is it before taxes?
They take it on the gross. Mm-hmm.
Gross, yeah. That money is invested into the stock market to further enrich the church. Is that right?
Well, it's not supposed to be, but they did have quite the scandal, just barely, called the Ensign Peak scandal, which was, gratuitously discharged just barely.
Oh, yeah. I had a feeling you'd be up to speed on that. I heard there was something that went on where there was a disclosure of vast sums of money, of interest money even.
Shell corporations. They are the master of the shell corporation. But just so people know, yes, they take that money, but not only that, they also have such a huge portfolio at this point. And especially after, they were very sympathetic to the Nazis in World War II in general. Actually, Werner von Braun was in a theological movie that was made just for Mormons, only for Mormons. Why was he in that movie? I don't know. People can look it up, but it's weird, huh? People often say we won that war. I don't know that we did. So
I've come to the same conclusion. Yeah. Yeah.
We see all these very important people, and we happen to know that at this time when Hitler was on the scene, not that it was him per se, I think he wasn't exactly what they say he was, but whatever he was leading was very occultic in nature and very racist in nature. And we get into the Great White Brotherhood and all these occult studies. Well, the church aligned with that because they didn't allow Black people at all to receive the priesthood to go to heaven, which you cannot go to the top heaven if you do not have it, until they were really pressured. And so That changed for the church in 1978. There was a war in heaven, because they believe in a pre-mortal existence where we lived. We chose all our problems, we chose our parents, we chose everything that's wrong in our lives. And also, with this, they have all this knowledge that they think, okay, we know all this, but we know why the angels fell with the war in heaven. And these people that were up there at the time who didn't pick a side, and they were like, oh, I don't know if I should go on, Lucifer's side or on God's side. So they called them fence sitters. And the fence sitters became black, not brown, not Mexican. It's not the same thing, not Asian, none of that. Only the black people were cursed with this. This is not the mark of Cain.
Well, and this is canon, right? So this is Book of Moses,
Yes.
chapter 7, verse 22, where it says the seed of Cain were black. That's just one reference.
The Cain curse is different, and they are much different much like Steiner. I don't know if you've studied, but with this whole Great White Brotherhood, they'll include like Eskimo and Asian and all these other races that are kind of okay. It's very similar to what their theology was, but black people, no. And Brigham Young is quoted, and he states, if you find your wife in bed with a black man, run a knife through both of them rather than let her live. There was a 1-drop rule. You couldn't have 1 drop of black blood in your system, like in your genealogy. And they assisted the Nazis when they were in their dating phase. And this is why they got the records that weren't Mormon records. We're talking Charlemagne and royalty and everything. So they got these records because they told them, you give us the records and we'll help you put up all the genealogy for these people. So that, and I quote, that the people you're dating don't come from a Jewess.
What?
Quote. That's a direct quote. And so they would put this up on their walls when it was time to like date, And so, yeah, this gets hairy. It's not good. It's definitely not good. So, I think, we haven't even shown the pieces that get really occultic in nature, and we know how occultic the whole Hitler stuff was, like all the Nazi stuff, especially I can't ever remember his guy's name that's under him, but he was even more occultic than Hitler. He was more the one. I'll think of it. Maybe Geller? Was it Gellin? Gellin? I think it's him. But anyway, he was very into the occult. And we know that the things that they shipped out of this castle, where they kept like all their most important things, and they were doing all this weird stuff. They even shipped over the gates of Pergamum. You know about this story?
No, I think I've heard of what you're about to say, but go ahead.
Well, where Hitler brought over those because, he was all about it, and he like had them brought clear over to Germany, and they would do outside like bonfires and different stuff. It gets weird, and it's to certain gods and goddesses, and they were very into the occult. And I think that's why they aligned so well with the Mormon theology, because if you strip it down to the bare bones and you look at it, like when you look at some of this stuff that they do in the temple, and some of it has been changed, and I can tell you which parts have been changed, but when you look at this, it's very occultic in nature, especially this is called the True Order of Prayer. And this is what really freaked me out, because they start chanting around this book, and this book is for sick people or whatever. Now it's printed, because it's printed, from online. You just add it. If somebody says to you, let me put your name on the temple list, say, that's okay. I'm good. Like, no, thank you. Because you can't help if somebody puts it on there, but you can tell them no and not give permission for that, at least. Because the stuff that they're doing in there, I dare say, this is a real photo of a guy new named Noah, snuck in with Google glasses because he was leaving the church. So he went through one last time and did a hoorah, and he recorded it all. And it's out there for people to see. But you'll see that they're holding their hands in a very specific way. And it looks just like this, which is renamed under Crowley like Typhonian magic, chaos magic, but it's older than him, right? Typhon is clear back. This is old stuff. This is Babylon. But look at the thumb. They're praying And when they pray at one point in the temple, and they wear the one-breasted robe. It's very similar to the Gnostic Mass. The women don't veil their faces anymore. We used to have to. They're raising their hand to the square. The underwear have the Masonic square on them. Let's see. I'll find that. And yeah, it's right here. They're sewed on your nipples and over your right knee and sometimes and over your belly button. And sometimes I really wonder like if there's anything else sewed in them that we don't know, because it seems to me that they're over orifices that open up to your body, which is probably not the best thing. I wore these for years and years and years, and I had no idea what a mason was, and they were on my chest.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So now they have changed them a little bit for the women. They've got this is all the rage. They've got sleeveless ones. No longer do you have to like shirts like this back in the day, it was a no way.
Mm-hmm.
Now they can. I never thought I'd live to see the day, to be quite frank. But
Yeah, I heard
we
that the
yeah,
the Mormons really frown upon a woman showing her shoulders. It's supposed to be indecent
yeah.
exposure, basically, right?
It's yeah, it's well, now I guess it's okay. But during this ceremony, and this is a recreation of it, now they say, "Oh God, hear the words of my mouth." But back in the day, they used to say Pele El. And so it's not great Hebrew, but yeah, we get back to that their God's name is Elohim. And he has a mother in heaven too. There's a woman. And if you look up, you know, Elohim's wife, if you look up old stuff, not Mormonism, it'll tell you who it is. And it's the Queen of Heaven.
Yeah.
So it gets really interesting when you're talking about all this stuff because I mean, people will say, no, that's not true. Elohim is God. I'm like, to some people, sure. But to some people, it's not, and it's kind of concerning. Like, I mean, we can't know exactly what they're saying. So yeah, we don't know what the intention was when they wrote this stuff
Mm-hmm.
or what we're doing here. And people will say, "Well, you know what? It doesn't matter because Solomon had his temple and we did stuff then." Yes, but was it not all hung on the cross and we're not supposed to do weird stuff anymore? And on top of it, were you there when this was created and do you know it hasn't been perverted for darkness? Like I don't. I don't. So, I think we shouldn't be doing stuff like this anymore in my opinion if we did it at all. But uh, hard to know. Hard to know. It's a little concerning. And there is a part in this whole thing where Satan comes and speaks to Adam in this whole, 2-hour long. Well, they've changed it again. But anyway, it used to be 2 hours long. And these mysteries, that's what it is. This is an ancient mystery school. People don't know. They're being initiated into it unknowingly. They don't know what the heck they're doing. They're just doing it. Well, why would they have anybody do that? Oh, well, let me think. What is the president of the church called to this day? Prophet, seer, and revelator. What do you get from necromancy? You can see things. You can prophesy. Like it doesn't take rocket science. They're charging the house with people that don't understand anything and they're like goyim to them and they use them. And they are using them. I guarantee you, the old people of the church, the top 1%, are not turning down their temple ceremonies to 1 hour with flashcards where you don't have to memorize anything. They just don't care if you do. They don't care about you. They care about what energy you're creating at that point so they can harness it for themselves. I guarantee you they're going through the whole motion. There's no way.
That's a very interesting perspective. So basically, it's an energy harvesting organization for
One of the things, yes, because Satan
yeah.
shows up in their temple ceremony. Satan shows up and he has an apron on and it's black. And Adam says, "What is that?" And why does he show up in the first place? Because Adam is crying out in the lone world to the God of this world, and who answers the call? Satan does.
Hmm.
That's interesting in itself, first of all. But we know that's true if we look at biblical stuff. We know what? Yeah, he is the God of this world, sure. So he isn't God, but of this fallen world, that's where it gets sticky. So what are they telling you right there? And they also say that, oh, Sorry about my dog. They also say that Jesus is the brother of Satan. And so, that's the story. The apron, when he comes, he has a black apron on, and then he looks at not Joseph. Adam looks at it and says, "What is that?" And he says, "It's a token of my power. It's a token of my powers and priesthoods." And so that's also interesting. And then what do we do at that point? The whole congregation stands, or at least they used to. I don't know what it is now. And then they say, "Put on your aprons," and they're made of fig leaves. And so I just think all of it's, I, you know, I just think that's a lot of stuff. I just think that's a lot. Like
So
people
Heidi,
really need to look at this.
so Heidi, you're saying that the Satan showing up with the black apron and all that, that's something that's reenacted during temple ceremonies. Is that what you're saying?
They reenact the mysteries just like Masons do. Yeah, they reenact a lot of it. I don't know what they do now. You used to have to memorize it and you'd go through the whole Garden of Eden skit. And this is very similar to what, the mysteries are for other people. But I don't know now what they do. And then you go to the veil and there's the whole initiatory and all this stuff that goes with it. That's a whole different thing. When you're naked and you get your new name. Well, what do they do in magic? They get a new name too. They do. And why do they give people a new name that you're never supposed to repeat except for at the veil the very first time? Well, your husband goes through at the veil and he gives his name to fake God behind the veil after you do all the handshakes that you better know. Because if you don't, you're not going to pass the angels and sentinels guarding the veil to heaven. You're not going to go to the top of the top if you don't know these. But now I guess they've changed it, like I said. And so once you get to the veil, then you whisper in somebody's ear. And they used to do the full embrace with like what the Freemasons do, the points of fellowship. But too many old guys got excited about it and they quit doing it because women are involved too. So it was
Oh,
breast to breast.
oh boy.
Um, yeah. And so they quit doing that. And I don't know what they do now. But so your husband goes through and then he calls you through because you're only saved by your husband's priesthood. You don't even get saved by God. You get saved by your husband. So yeah,
Wow.
he calls your name through and you're not to repeat it, but they keep it. And everybody that went through, like you think you're super special with this new name, but no, everybody that went through that day got the same name. But they also have a record of that name. And so in magical orders, if you know somebody's secret name, then you can use it against them to like control them or whatever. So they say. And I'm not saying that would work on a person that's like saved and whatever, but this is like the belief system behind this.
Hmm.
Also, Mormons call each other brother and sister. Well, in magical orders, what do they call each other? Breuer and Sawyer. That's what they used to call each other. That, not brother and sister, Breuer and Sawyer. And the FLDS still do it. That's a magical order way. That's not a Christian thing. I've
Hmm.
never heard of another Christian say Breuer and Sawyer. Like that's a magical order system. And so when we look at all this stuff, like people will come back at me like, "Oh, well that's what Christians call." Okay, okay, but like you have to look at the whole thing. It gets weird. So, yeah. And then this is the sealing part in the temple where you're getting married and you do this for yourself the first time, but then you do this for dead people too. And
Okay.
so you lean over this altar, like I'm on this side and he's on that side, and we're both looking in the mirror. And you say you're going to be married for time and all eternity. And it creates this. And you say this as you look in these mirrors and they create a portal. Well, just so people know, and I don't care if they make fun of me or not, you guys need to look up magical things because portals and mirrors are a real documented thing. And if people don't want to believe it and they just laugh about it and make fun of me, fine. But this has been much older than me. Like this is old. This is old magic. And so, and every one of them always end up with this green light at the end, which is very strange as well. Like I think I have another picture of the mirrors where it shows that, but it makes you step back and wonder, like, here, see how it always ends up slightly green?
Hmm. Yeah.
And, okay, it's nothing, but also it's not biblical. So why would you do any of that and say you're going to be married for time and all eternity when we all know the Bible says that's not true? What does it say? There's none of that in heaven. We're going to be like the angels, right?
Hmm. Yep. No, no marriage and no giving in marriage. We're all going to be like the angels. Yep.
But people get sucked in because, say you had a child die or a spouse die, and you can still go get married to them post death, to your husband and seal your child to you. So they suck people in, and oftentimes it's the best people. Like, it's the super family oriented people, and they are the true blue people that stay forever no matter what I show, because
Right.
they want that to be true, you
Yeah, and
know.
I feel like that's why acceptance of Mormonism has been so widespread amongst, places like Tonga, Samoa, because they're so family oriented.
Absolutely, and the Latin community, and they're pushing it on the Latin community so hard, like in South America, it's concerning. And lastly, on the slides, this is a picture from the old Nauvoo temple. And I'm sorry to say, you guys, like, some of these pictures, and there's a lot of them, um, they're they're not they're not what you guys think they are. Like, I don't know why that or this kind of stuff would be all over the temple, the most holy place you should go, right? And we've got upside down pentacles and pentagrams and moon phases and cloud stones and Masonic stuff. Like, what does any of that have to do with Jesus, let alone the phallic imagery? I mean, we've got like phallus, circle, phallus, circle, phallus, circle. Like, they know what they're doing. They're not stupid. Their symbols tell on them all the time. Like, they've gotten a little more chill about that. They don't do like the full on pentacle and pentagram anymore, because, and also it's facing downward, which means whatever they're pulling it down. They're pushing it downward. Well, what if, and I'm just saying, I'm just postulating, what if all this stuff we're doing for the temple and all these dead people, these spirits, they're trying to lock them here? Like, what if they're locking them down? Because that is pulling down energy. Like, if you look that up in witchcraft books and stuff, that's not a good thing. Even they don't turn them upside down. I
Mm.
mean, the Baphomet worship, yeah, they do. But I don't know. It makes one have to step back and wonder. Like, you have to step back and be more open-minded to things and see it. And then the last thing, you brought this up. That is the Enochian alphabet above. And below is a copy of Joseph Smith's symbols that he said the Book of Mormon was written by. And they are almost nearly identical. And so, do I think he knew some magic? You better believe I do.
Wait a minute. So that's John Dee's
Yes.
Enochian alphabet that he discovered in like the 1500s. But below that, what is that again?
That is Joseph Smith's reformed Egyptian, is what he called it. Look at these. Look at the
Are you
S.
serious?
Very serious. And the reason why we have this, and this is actually verified, this is called the Anton transcript. And the Anton transcript was given to, basically, they took it to have them verify that it was like ancient, like an ancient language. And then they asked them, well, where did you get this from? Because he was going to do it. And they were like, he's a scholar and everything. And he said, well, the angels gave it to us. And he's like, get out of here. And then they were like, well, can we have our paper back? And he's like, no, you cannot. That is why we have the Anton transcript. And people can look this up. This is very real. But these characters are very nearly similar. So,
So where
and
is the Anton transcript now? Is it
oh,
in
I should look that up. I think I think they still have it in
the
the museums. Let's find out. I
like the
know the
Salt
guy was
Lake?
like, "You can't have it back," which I thought was hysterical. I was like, "Ha, that's hilarious." Let's see, where is the Anton transcript?
So it's probably in the church's hands, though.
I'm
I'm
assuming.
curious. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
curious to see what you
I'm
find.
let's see. I haven't ever thought of that. Anton transcript. Let's put. Oh, yep, the Church History Library in Salt
Mm.
Lake City, Utah. Yep, there it is. So this document is also known as the Charactors document, Caractors. It is believed to be copied from the Book of Mormon gold plates. So, yeah.
Huh. Thank you for that. That actually helps me a lot with what I'm working on right now. In fact, it ties in so many things full circle. So let me just put this on screen. The wealthiest church in the world, everyone. Heidi has just connected some serious dots for you. And again,
Yeah,
this is not to be taken lightly. Dig into a little bit of LDS apologetics, understand how to defend the faith from this onslaught of Freemason,
it
Enochian
is. Yeah,
mysticism, and all
magic.
this
Yep.
stuff that's going on in here. I don't
Yes,
know if
and
you go
scary.
go ahead, Heidi.
Oh, I was just going to say, if they want to see kind of a big portion of how, the Mormon Mafia ends up with one of the biggest portions, which they ended up with Howard Hughes Medical Center, and Robert Gay ended up over that until the day he died, which he was given a pretty penny to continue running that organization. They are also one of the main contributors to CRISPR technology and also like transhumanism stuff. And the church is widely aligned with the New World Order. Just so people know, they're involved in the John Birch Society, they're involved in Rotarians, they're involved in everything Freemasonry. It gets in the weeds, including the Salt Lake City Temple. Right now, they redid it, and the grounds look exactly like the Vatican now, which they look exactly like a keyhole from an aerial view, just like the Vatican. So they're not hiding anything anymore. And also, they pushed 2020 for the cure thing, and they told everyone to be good global citizens. That is their exact wording, and go get that right away. But they own most of the pharmaceutical companies as well. People need to watch themselves.
Conflict of interest is what you call that in any other circumstance.
Absolutely. And this was something that made many, many members say, no, I'm not doing certain things and start looking into stuff. So I'm grateful for that, because whether you chose to do that or not, that's fine. But it never should be your church that has anything to do with your health. Like, that's weird. So it should be
Yeah, unless
between you and
unless you're
yourself.
calling upon the name of Jesus. I mean,
Yeah,
if
that's
and
different.
someone helps facilitate that, then that's fine. But not. I totally get what you're saying. Yeah, a
Not
lot of churches
forcing. Yeah. Yeah.
became discredited after 2020. I mean, 2020
Mhm.
onwards, so many became discredited. In fact, we talked a little bit a moment before, the podcast here. I I entered into a deeper relationship with Christ in 2019, just a couple months before 2020. The everything unfolded and the whole world shut down, and then the same thing happened with you. So I feel like 2020 was a big awakening for a
Yes.
lot of people to come back into a right relationship with God. So praise God for that, and praise God for your work, Heidi. I mean, it's difficult stuff because there's so many schools of mystical thought. Different, they come from
Mhm.
different places and time periods, and they all kind of intersect. What you just showed, though, there's so much. There's so many overlays between Egyptian, Solomonic,
Mhm.
Templarian, Essenic from the Essenes,
Yes.
and
Yes.
and I thank you for pointing that. I just have a few more questions if you're good. I know we've
Yeah,
been.
I'm good. Yeah, and I think that the thing is like so many people, like even I've had pastors. I'm not Christian enough for the Christians, and I'm not in an occult situation. I don't want to be. So I'm in this weird middle ground where I will say the things that need to be said and I don't care. So I have been literally discriminated against. In fact, this week I was discriminated against, and I'll share off camera by who, but a very important high up pastor that said I had gone way too far down the rabbit hole and she was going to pray for me, even though I have evidence of everything I say. So,
Yeah, I think a good word for it, I lovingly say this, is the normies. They just don't understand what we're up against yet. I think it'll become a little bit more clear as some major things are going to unfold here in the next few years. But
yes.
there still are just the very idealistic normies amongst us, and hey, let's just continue to do our best to wake people
Yep.
up. I think that's the
That's
most
all we can
important
do.
thing.
Yep.
Uh,
And we can't, I mean, I get it. Like when I first started all this, I thought, oh my gosh, this is nuts. And the
mhm.
more and more I learned, I was like, this is nuts. I mean, but it's still true. Like, what do you do with that? Keep it. And people are always like, you're an ex Mormon, just move on with your life. That's so dumb that you come out and speak. Just leave them alone. They're so nice. Look, I'm not the type of person that can jump off of a burning like boat in the middle of the ocean and just leave people out to sea to fend for themselves. Like, I'm going to come back. I'm going to bring the boat, and I'm going to try and bring as many people with me as I can, because that's just who I am as a person. And, I get a lot of criticism. I get a lot of hate. I mean, it's not easy for sure. But we know this, like, if it's God's word, it's God's word. Like, it doesn't matter about my feelings. You know what I mean? Like, it is what it is. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, we're called to expose the works of darkness. Paul makes that pretty clear in Ephesians. But
Yeah.
yeah, Heidi, I just have a couple of questions. First, we've talked a little bit about this, the Joseph Smith translation of the Bible. Um, I know it was never really completed. At least that's kind of the overall umbrella narrative. But Joseph Smith considered it completed, actually. And he said this is ready to be printed, but he died shortly before it could be officially printed and published.
Right. Hmm.
Some of the writings in there became part of the Pearl of Great Price, for instance, which I'm going to point your attention to. Here's the thing about cults, in my view, is they're very open canon. So
Yeah.
we have the Old New Testament, but they just want to keep adding and adding and adding. And I think that's what makes
Hmm.
a cult, is that they want their open canon. They want to continue adding to scripture. And one thing that I found very interesting here, this is from, I forget what you called it, the Blue website, the official Blue website.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. The True Blue Mormons. Yeah.
True Blue. Yeah. True
TBM.
Blue
Yeah.
website. You go to the Bible dictionary, you go to Enoch, and here's something very interesting that's kind of at the bottom here. I'll blow it up. It says there are at least 3 apocalyptic works purporting to be the books of Enoch. Of course, that's first, second, and third. These are included in the category usually called pseudepigrapha, meaning writings under assumed names. But what they're saying here is, on the basis of latter-day revelation, of course, Joseph Smith,
Hmm.
it appears that there
No,
are some
not
truths.
only him. No,
Oh, okay, okay.
every prophet is considered a prophet, seer, and revelator, and talks to God daily.
There you go.
Period.
There you
Yes.
go. Yeah, I forgot about that. But obviously, with this, what they did was, or
Right.
what Joseph Smith did, is he put a lot about Enoch in Moses 6 and 7. And I think we've already kind of, touched on
Yes.
this. He goes into so much extra biblical detail about who Enoch was. What are your thoughts, knowing what you know now about Enochian mysticism and everything? What do you think are some of the reasons why Joseph Smith put so much emphasis on Enoch? Why did he receive so much extra biblical revelation about Enoch that he included both in the Doctrine of Covenants and Pearl of Great Price?
Well, the 6th and 7th books that you mentioned, if anybody goes back and looks at the history of those, right? They're not really about the Bible. They're kind of, everybody that knows about this kind of knows, is that they were hiding things in plain sight back then. So they didn't want to be burned as witches. So this was how a lot of this came to be, is that they would hide things in these extra canonical books and people would know what they really were. And so those 2 particular books you mentioned are part of that. And so I think he knew that it aligned with his magical system, which he attributes to Moroni, the golden angel, right? So he's going to attribute all of that under the same thing for these people. And Brigham Young came in, and I think Joseph just let it fly. I think he was like, "Yep, we're a Harry Potter mystery school. Like, come and join us. It's weird. Like, let's get weird." Like, I don't think he cared. That's what got him killed, first of all. That particular speech, the King Follett discourse, has been taken out and put as so they have something called the Journal of Discourses, or the JOD, and anything that the Mormons don't want to be canon anymore, like the whole black people thing we talked about, they'll stick it in there and they're like, "We never said that." Like, that wasn't, they weren't talking as a prophet right then. They were just a man, Heidi. I'm like, "Wait, I thought he's the prophet and he talks to God daily." Well, he wasn't feeling prophety right that minute. You're just judging him. And I'm like, "No, either he's the prophet or he's not. You got to pick a choice. Like, it can't be both," but they do that. he's just only a man. So these just only a man visions end up in these books, and there's tons of them. Tons of them. I don't even know how many, probably over 100 at this point. But they'll take them out and they'll put all this stuff, including the King Follett discourse, into these things. And then they're like, well, that doesn't matter anymore because we had it revealed to us in 1978 that the Black people can be a part of the church now. And we encourage it. And they're in every commercial we ever make now. So this is the kind of stuff they do to kind of backtrack. And it's the same thing with these books. Like whatever they do still align with, it'll be there. But whatever is like, oh, they're going to raise the eyebrow, hide it. And who got really good at that? It starts with Brigham Young. Brigham Young was much more organized and much more methodical and much more business minded than Joseph Smith ever thought to be. In fact, I dare say if Joseph Smith lived, this would not be that big of a religion, or it would have died out completely, to be honest. Because Brigham was the one. He was the guy that made it more like, what did he do? I'm running away because you guys are bad and you make me feel bad about my polygamy, but yet I'm going to write a letter immediately to the president. We will help you finish the railroad. Signed, Brigham Young. And that's what they did. Like, they're not hiding from anybody like that. They're making mad money. Yeah.
Wow.
On
I did.
free labor of the saints, free on the backs of their congregation.
Well, I mean, that still goes on with missionary work. You get these kids to sign up and they actually pay to be missionaries. Right. So,
Yeah.
yeah. And then they learn multiple languages. They're easy recruits for the CIA or other three-letter agencies, perhaps, which you kind of alluded to. You mentioned that earlier.
Here we have the FBI, the CIA, the NSA. Almost all of these are headquartered. So within 40 miles of me, there is the Air Force Base, the CIA, the FBI, the NSA, and the IRS.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
yeah.
So
And
Heidi,
they'll admit it. Yeah, they admit it.
going back to what you said, so what you're saying is the Doctrine and Covenants and Pearl of Great Price, that's considered canonical. That's canon. That's
Yes, that
law.
is. Yes, yes.
But what you're also saying is they try to get away from certain aspects of it when they can. Is that right? Is that what you
Yeah,
meant?
they'll take pieces out. So if it gets spicy like later and they're like, "Oh, this verse is in here," or it's been edited so many times, like, and they'll say, "Well, it's been edited, but we only edited out the these and the bad spelling." No, they didn't. No, you guys can go look at it yourself in the Journal of Discourses what they took out of there, and it's a lot, including speeches and different things. Like, one of the more modern prophets stood up. I think it was Ezra Taft Benson that stood up and said, "Look at our native brethren. They are becoming so much more white and delightsome now. Look at that." Well, the women were scrubbing with lemons, and they'll admit to it because they felt pressured to stay out of the sun and not get any, darkness on their skin and wash with lemons. I mean, there's this whole horrible article about that. And I just thought, oh my gosh, like, and they were inbreeding, as well with them. So like, it's bad. Like they were just trying to they told them, take their children, take their wives and have children with them so that they will become more white and delightsome. They bought their children. They literally say they did.
Wow.
So,
Yeah, no, I've
yeah,
heard the white and delightsome stuff. And yeah, no, I mean, to this day, Mormon leadership does not consist of people of color. I mean, this is a
right.
known fact.
I think there's two. I think there might be two.
There might be two
I,
at this point
uh,
out of their many, many years of existence
many.
now.
Yeah, they finally went ahead and got some because they wanted a token, that's it. Which should
Right.
upset these people so much. I'm like, my niece is Black, and I just think, man, if my niece came to me tomorrow as a Black person instead of my white son, I would be so much more sad for her joining the LDS church because I would be like, "Don't you know what they said? Like, this is
Mm,
awful. Like, don't do that. Why would you wanna align yourself?" I'd be upset either way, but that just seems bizarre to me. Like why would you want to align with these people that said such horrible things?
right.
No, I
Right.
wouldn't. Yeah.
W- Well, so Heidi, switching
Gross.
gears a little bit. So you mentioned something I just want to get a little bit more clarity on. You mentioned that what Joseph Smith founded at first was known as the Order of Enoch. At least that's how he understood it to be, the name that was supposed to be attributed to his organization, his following. Is that right? Is he the one that spearheaded the name Order of Enoch, and why was that eventually changed to Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints? Or am I getting kind of the facts messed up there?
So the church was originally called the Church of Christ, and that gets into a really hairy situation. And people can check out my Dartmouth information. There's a whole bunch on that and why it was called that. But the Order of Enoch, or it was also known as the United Order, refers to the collective economic programs established within the Latter day Saint movement. So, them being taking everything and living in a communal order. So that
Mm.
is why he called it that. And he wasn't supposed to have read Enoch at all at that point. But they're like, no, he never read that book. It's kind of funny, but
Well,
it
what's
was
very interesting about that, Heidi, is the Book of Enoch. I don't know if you're aware, but it was introduced in 1773 by James Bruce of Kinnaird, he was a Scottish Freemason, high level. But 1773, so it was circulating around that time amongst Freemasons, because we didn't get kind of a translation into English supposedly until 50 years after James Bruce brought it from his travels straight to
oh,
Africa. So that's 1773. So I'm curious. Yeah, I clearly Joseph Smith was
well,
inspired about
well,
Enoch, even though it was not necessarily understood to be in circulation amongst the normies.
well,
Um,
so some of the people that settled with, good old Joe, like my relatives who were quite the conspiratorial royal family, Henry Talbot Stewart or Stuart Talbot, I can't ever remember which way it goes, but he was supposedly the son of the king, but illegitimate. And he came from South Africa and he came here on a boat with Mormons. And so, they were bringing people over all the time that were converting over. So I possibly wonder if, not just him, but any of these people that are coming over from those areas at that time were bringing this information with him. So I would think books is the one thing they would bring because they were pretty, revered at that time. But just another thing he may have seen it from was okay, so they're going to say it wasn't, but it was his cousin Johnny Smith was the first professor at Dartmouth, and Dr. Nathan Smith, even though they say, no, no, they're not related, they hail from 70 miles apart in Massachusetts, all of them. They say they aren't related whatsoever. Back then, people were pretty much related, especially in that close of an area. He was the first doctor that opened up the medical school of Dartmouth and later founded the medical schools at Yale. So we're talking about these people that are most likely connected with Bonesman and have a lot different secret knowledge, right? But the cousin Johnny, he owned the rare bookstore. Okay. And he was very interested in Arabic teachings. He was fluent in tons of languages. Like he had all these crazy books, including, since you mentioned, the Scotochronicon. And so he had some weird books and Joseph is Scottish and Irish, a little bit English. We know this now. And there is a lot of talk around him being a sacred bloodline of the Nile. Like, and the Nine of Nile. It's like an ancient story, but
could you
oh
explain that?
boy,
Explain this to
that's
me.
okay. We needed to, I almost didn't tell you this because I'm doing a show on it soon, but maybe we should do it together because that would be fun. But anyway, this is Old Irish having 9 hostages was a legendary Irish king. He was the High King of Ireland and the ancestor of the Nile. Okay. And so these dynasties were dominated in Ireland from the 6th to the 10th century. Although Irish annalistic and chronicle sources place his reign in 4th and 5th centuries, they date him like at different times, but he definitely existed. This Nile, like I said, was this legendary figure, and the sources come from the Roll of Kings. And I will tell you guys, remember, this whole familysearch.org was orchestrated and put in by one royal lineage. And it says that on this really old parchment that somebody sent me. And it says one royal line. And then they started selling it. The Mormons were like, this is really our line. It goes clear back to all the old kings and everything. And that's why Joseph said he hails from royalty. Now, people want to poo poo it all they want, but his DNA aligns. Apparently, these 9 of Nile are very rare, and his DNA actually aligns with this 9 of Nile haplotype for the male, because the Y chromosome stays the same no matter what, because of, I mean, you guys only have one, so you can only pass on one. So this line is straight down, and this is from, pretty reputable people. They are Mormon, however. So I mean, we go back and forth with that, whether or not. But Joseph himself, claimed also that he was one of Jesus's bloodline, because he believed
Hmm.
in the whole Grail story. So, it gets weird, but I will tell you guys, every genealogy piece that goes back into Family Search and does these genealogy searches is to this one royal bloodline paper that they link this all to, and that was from Bennett, who they say wasn't related to Bob Bennett, the senator. I'll figure it out. Polygamy was so big at that time that they can say, no, it was this one, that one, because the mothers. But yeah, I highly doubt that they're not related. But anyway, yeah, this one royal bloodline. And they definitely had his DNA, because don't forget, they're digging people up.
Yep. With that,
So,
what do they call it? The cane?
yep, the Canes and yeah, who even, I dare say, I sometimes wonder if, they're into skull and bones type stuff. Maybe they have their bones, like not in the ground.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So, who
Yeah.
knows? They kept digging them up. They moved them 3 times, I think it was. So, I mean, that gets weird. But yeah. So, they definitely say this bloodline, the family DNA matched super close to the descendants of the Nile of the 9 hostages. So, and this isn't just Heidi saying it or Exmo. This is Mormon stuff. This isn't Exmo stuff at all. So,
Mm.
yes. 'Cause it gets weird. Yeah.
Thank you for
People, yeah.
sharing these details. Oh my goodness. Heidi Love. Appreciate
Oh,
appreciate having you on.
of
We probably
course.
need to have some more conversations. I think
Yeah.
there's a lot that we can probably dig up, no pun intended, in the future, and help people understand and be
Yes.
situationally aware to the spiritual war that we're finding ourselves in with the largest church in the world, the most at least they have the most money. Uh,
Money-wise, yes. Mhm.
yeah. Well, we'll
It's
end it here, but
weird.
you have anything else for us, Heidi, before we sign off here?
Um, that's everything for me. I'm found anywhere you can search me up, but Spotify, I drop twice a week, or more, but on YouTube, it's a little bit hard. They don't like that I talk about this stuff, and I have been dinged. So I do it once a week on there. They don't get nearly as much. I just don't want to lose my channel. So that's why you guys can check me out, and Spotify, twice as much content over. I think my last episode was 213. I do have other people on with me, and we just talk about lots of things like Templars. You guys can see. He's like a famous author. Like I'll invite people on if I'm going down a rabbit hole and I think something's interesting. That's usually what my content's about that day. So, yeah,
Well, awesome. It was great having you on. I
thank
learned a
you.
ton. I actually took notes. I had to take, I don't know if you saw me. I'm like,
You're
ah.
good.
And
No,
hopefully all
you're
you
good.
guys listening are taking notes as well, because there's some good stuff in here so you can sharpen your apologetic skills, guys. If you need to be able to defend the faith, the Bible quickly, and you're talking to Mormons, I have a resource for you right here. It's from Dennis and Ronnie Higley. The Truth About Mormonism. They used to be really, really high up. They wrote a really simple, short book. You guys can grab this for $3 on the website, bereanscall.com, I believe it is. But just I have it on screen here, guys. Go
I'm
check
glad. I'm glad
check
you
it out.
shared that, because some people ask me, and I'm like, oh man, I don't know what part to tell you that won't scare them to death. So I'm going to start referring to that book as well.
What's cool about this one is it just shows very simply why the Book of Mormon is inaccurate historically, archaeologically, with some of the things that it says about things that didn't exist in the desert of the Middle East. There's too many inconsistencies linguistically. There's too many problems. This points it out in a very concise way. So,
Awesome. Awesome.
yeah, make
Thank
sure you
you.
share that with your audience too. I don't get paid
Yes.
to
Need
endorse that, by the way. It's just something that
Yeah,
I want to endorse.
I want to make sure, because when people ask me, I'm like, "Oh no, all the stuff I'm in is like 10 shades past you figured it out, and it gets really weird." So that's good.
Yeah, no,
Um,
this is a good resource. So, anyways, Heidi, well, God bless you. Thank you for hanging out.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And yeah, let's do some more collaborations in the future.
Let's do it.
Appreciate you. Let's do it.
Yes, thanks again. Bye.